FCK. In a short span of time, Han Yi experienced immense joy, shocking surprise, and devastating despair, narrowly escaping death. At this moment, all Han Yi could think of was cursing aloud. Was it really necessary for fate to backfire so absurdly just because I gained 1,000,000 contribution points? Finally landing on the ground of an uninhabited island, Han Yi gasped for breath, still shaken. Fortune and misfortune truly go hand in hand. His expression flickered between gloom and light. His premonition wasn't wrong, that place indeed held a great opportunity. There lay the spirit of heaven and earth capable of advancing to the Tao integration realm, along with a peculiar broken sword that could rival the essence itself. Had his strength been sufficient, he could have slain Azure Wind, subdued the broken sword, and not only stepped into the Tao integration realm but also gained a divine weapon matching his power. The thought of such a scenario caused Han Yi's breathing to quicken. He even contemplated returning to try again. But fortunately, he retained a shred of reason, quickly shaking his head and dismissing the thought. My strength is insufficient, he lamented inwardly. To kill Azure Wind, I would need at least the Soul Transformation Realm. Even with my Heavenly Fortune Sutra, it would take at least 100 years to achieve that. And what if someone else discovers that place during this time? I should have known better than to be greedy for small gains. I should have used the 1,000,000 contribution points to quickly raise my cultivation level instead. Slow and steady, what use is that compared to the thrill of stepping into Tao integration overnight? His mind churned with conflicting thoughts, leaving Han Yi increasingly restless. Meanwhile, Li Fan, the one who had inadvertently guided Han Yi to encounter Azure Wind and the trapped sword through his Cloudwater illusion dream technique, had quietly departed from the Kongyan Sea. He arrived at the Tianling prefecture. The ceasefire was now a certainty, and many cultivators who had been conscripted to the front lines had returned to their homelands. The former battlefield had regained its calm, though the thick stench of blood lingered in the air, refusing to dissipate. Looking into the distance, the land was scarred with deep cracks, crisscrossing everywhere. The sky was an eerie mix of red and green, forming a surreal and unsettling sight. Squads of azure-robed cultivators roamed the Tianling prefecture, purifying the lingering resentment in the air and repairing the fractured earth. Far off, faint, muffled rumblings could be heard. From time to time, the distorted images of the heavens revealed some massive entity moving between the skies and earth. Damn it! The Five Elements Great Cave Heaven belongs to our Tianling prefecture. How could they just take it away like that? Well, it's better this way. Though it's a fertile land, it's no good omen. Too many cultivators have perished in this battle. Indeed, our Tianling prefecture has suffered heavy losses this time. Many old friends can no longer be contacted. On his journey, Li Fan overheard the cultivators around him discussing the origin of the Tianling Prefecture War and the existence of the Five Elements Great Cave Heaven were no longer secrets. The cultivators of the Tianling state had complex feelings about the immensely prosperous Cave Heaven. Thus, when the 10,000 Immortal Alliance officially relocated it to the Central Lands, many cultivators gathered to watch the process. Hidden among the crowd, Li Fan took only a brief glance before retreating and heading in the opposite direction, toward the original location of the Five Elements Great Cave Heaven. Within half a day, Li Fan arrived at his destination. Amidst the mountains, where two peaks once met, now lay a vast, pitch-black abyss. The once scenic mountain range had turned eerie and terrifying. With the cave heaven gone, this place held no value for guardianship. The heavily guarded area had been vacated, leaving only a few golden core cultivators for routine surveillance. Clearly, these cultivators didn't take their task seriously. With the war over and the cave heaven moved, who would bother coming here? Thus, they were lax, gathered in idle chatter without much vigilance. Taking advantage of this, Li Fan easily bypassed their defenses and slipped into the black void above. Pausing before the pitch-black void, Li Fan observed quietly. Unlike the utterly annihilated abyss he had once seen, this void still carried traces of strange energy. Spiritual energy lingered faintly within. This isn't a dead zone. Receiving no warnings from his spiritual intuition, Li Fan pondered briefly before stepping into the void. In an instant, the light disappeared. Li Fan found himself engulfed in darkness, as if he had become blind, with no sense of vision. His divine sense extended like tendrils, probing the surroundings, yet returned nothing but emptiness. Looking back, the scenery of the Tianling prefecture had vanished. It was as if he had plunged into an endless abyssal sea, utterly lost. No matter how he moved in any direction, it felt as though he remained in the same spot. This stark contrast between movement and stillness caused a faint dizziness. For any other cultivator, such a situation would surely induce panic. But to Li Fan, a void with only entrapment and no lethal danger was hardly a cause for concern. With the truth at his disposal, even the most perilous deadlands couldn't confine him. With a single thought, he could escape this predicament, so Li Fan felt no anxiety. He calmed his mind and began to perceive the environment around him. Although it appeared to be a void, the darkness seemed to conceal something. At intervals, ripples of an inexplicable force would brush past his body. But whenever he tried to trace the source of these ripples, the trail would abruptly vanish, as if it had all been an illusion. Lost in the darkness for an unknown amount of time, nothing changed. The 10,000 Immortal Alliance must have investigated this place after relocating the cave heaven. If they didn't uncover anything, it means the secrets here are deeply hidden. Li Fan thought to himself, not the least bit impatient. Time and opportunity were in his favor. Setting aside all external affairs, Li Fan focused entirely on the surroundings. Abandoning his attempts to track the ripples, he allowed himself to flow along with them instead. Gradually, he felt his body begin to move within the void. However, the reprieve was short-lived. Before long, it felt as though he collided with an invisible wall, forcing him to stop. Read extra chapters on greater than Spirit Stone translation. Li Fan squinted his eyes, trying to discern the object obstructing his path in the pitch darkness. What surprised him, however, was that neither his spiritual sense nor his physical touch revealed the presence of any obstacle ahead. Li Fan frowned slightly. This time, instead of aligning with the ripples that emerged in the spatial void, he deliberately bypassed their timing and directly sped forward. Strangely, the wall he had perceived within the ripples earlier seemed to have vanished as though it had never existed. Li Fan could clearly sense that his position within this void-like space had shifted. Or rather, part of his positional attributes had altered, while another part remained unmoving. It felt as though moving by his own momentum and following the ripples, flow were two entirely different planes of existence, each unaffected by the other. This perplexing phenomenon was beyond Li Fan's current understanding. For now, he set aside the question of what lay behind it. Clearing his mind, he waited for the ripples to reappear in the void. When the ripples arrived, he aligned himself with them, knowingly hurtling toward the obstacle ahead. Boom! In an instant, Li Fan saw stars as he was forced out of alignment with the ripples. After inspecting himself, he found that while his body remained unharmed, his soul seemed to have suffered a slight shock. Pondering for a moment, Li Fan decided to abandon such reckless attempts for now. He did not leave the area. Instead, he stood quietly in the void, focusing his mind to analyze each ripple as it arrived, hoping to discover why he was being obstructed while the ripples passed through unhindered. When he concentrated in this absolute darkness and silence, the occasional ripple became particularly striking. Li Fan meticulously recorded the timing of each ripple. After patiently collecting data from tens of thousands of occurrences, he replicated the pattern in the Tao deviation stone within his sea of consciousness, attempting to uncover any hidden rules. Effort rewarded diligence. Li Fan discovered that roughly every 1,000 ripples, one distinctive ripple would appear, significantly stronger and faster than the others, spreading nearly twice as fast across the void. Heart stirred, Li Fan calculated the intervals. When the anomaly reappeared, he steadied his spirit and aligned himself with it. This time, his attempt produced results. It was no longer like colliding with a wall but instead felt like rubbing against an obstruction. A sharp, knife-like pain surged from the depths of his soul. Enduring the agony, Li Fan gritted his teeth and persisted. However, the deeper the ripple went, the more incompatible he became with his surroundings. The knife-like sensation soon turned into a savage tearing, an unbearable pain that almost caused him to lose consciousness. It was only his innate self-preservation instinct that pulled him out of alignment with the ripple. Phew! Li Fan gasped heavily, his body drenched in sweat from the pain. Even after disengaging from the ripples, the sensation of his soul being torn lingered as though etched into his being. It took the passing of 2 complete, 1,000 ripple intervals, for the pain to gradually fade. Once recovered, hesitation flickered across Li Fan's face. But when the next anomalous ripple arrived, he once again threw himself into it. This time, he seemed to last slightly longer, or so he thought. Without waiting for the pain to fully dissipate, Li Fan immersed his spirit into the ripple once more. Arg! Li Fan's face twisted in agony, his body convulsing under the torment of his soul's suffering. A flash of ferocity crossed his eyes, and the fleeting thoughts of giving up were immediately extinguished by the reverse cultivation method of the Xuanwang heart-refining mantra. Just a little pain, do you think you can stop me? Again, what followed was a relentless cycle of trials. Li Fan endured unspeakable torment in his attempts to ride the anomalous ripple into the depths of the void. The pain escalated each time, from tearing to 1,000 needles piercing, then to the sensation of being crushed and ground repeatedly. By the end, his mind became a blank slate. Only the unwavering determination in his heart sustained him, preventing him from abandoning his efforts. Throughout this ordeal, the Xuanwang heart-refining mantra played a pivotal role. Human nature tends to shy away from suffering. In such excruciating circumstances, thoughts of surrender, such as, "Forget it, why bother?" or, "This isn't necessary," naturally arose in Li Fan's mind. Normally, such thoughts could have shaken his resolve. However, under the grinding effect of the mantra's reverse cultivation, they were transformed into nourishment for his soul. Without this, even with his exceptional mental fortitude, Li Fan would have been unable to endure the pain. But regardless of the difficulty, Li Fan ultimately succeeded. He did not know how much time had passed, but when he finally regained consciousness, he found himself in a mysterious yet strangely familiar space. In this realm, horizontal and vertical lines intersected, while particles of various colors zipped along the lines at great speed. Occasionally, particles collided, bursting into radiant seven-colored lights before vanishing as quickly as they appeared. Where is this? Li Fan first examined his body. Surprisingly, it appeared as though crudely sketched from intersecting lines, both comical and eerie. Yet, it felt no different from his normal physical form. Careful not to act rashly, Li Fan evaded the streaking particles as he observed the wondrous space. This seems somewhat similar to the Tianquan mirror space I saw before. However, the Tianquan mirror only displayed black and white, unlike this colorful realm. Wait, I remember. Li Fan's heart stirred as he replayed stored images in the Tao deviation stone, analyzing them closely. In the final frame, he noted that the edges of the black and white world also contained traces of seven-colored light. It seemed black and white, and seven colors were two opposing energies. In the black and white world, the seven-colored light was fragmented and assimilated into its form. A newborn Tianquan mirror. Li Fan squinted his eyes, lost in thought. Before long, he arrived at a conjecture. The black and white world undoubtedly represented the Tianquan mirror. The seven-colored radiance, on the other hand, likely embodied a microcosm of the real world. The intersecting lines resembled the laws of nature, as seen through the human Tao stardust representing the principles governing the real world. The Tianquan mirror is deciphering the real world in its own way. And this, Li Fan's eyes lit up with understanding, is a microcosm of the world in its primordial state. The term, world, might not fully capture the concept here. A more fitting description would be a micro-world, or cave heaven, a lower-tier existence. Undoubtedly, a newly formed five-elements great cave heaven was taking shape here. The gate of the mysterious origin is the root of heaven and earth, Li Fan murmured to himself. In the ancient texts of the Xuanwang realm, there were similar expressions. Heaven and earth nurture all things. But where do heaven and earth themselves originate? Among cultivators, there is no shortage of those with a spirit of exploration. Aside from the cultivators striving to reconnect with other cultivation realms outside the Xuanwang realm, some specifically study the birth of heaven and earth and the origins of living beings. Li Fan had read some related books. These cultivators believed that heaven and earth are like humans, they grow and evolve over time. The Xuanwang realm, in its infancy, might have been akin to a micro-cave heaven. After countless epochs, it eventually developed into its current form. Such micro-cave heavens could either have been created by powerful cultivators and ancient immortals, or spontaneously emerged from the void. As for the true vastness of the space-time they inhabited, cultivators remained largely unaware. Yet, there was no doubt that the Xuanwang realm was but an insignificant speck within the infinite expanse of space-time. Even if few cultivators cared about this reality, it did not change its essence. In this boundless space-time, the embryonic origins of worlds are referred to by cultivators as the root of heaven and earth. It is the source of worlds, the convergence of laws, and the primordial essence of creation. Though theorized, no one had ever truly witnessed it. Unexpectedly, through the accumulation of knowledge from multiple reincarnations and his own indomitable will, Li Fan had managed to arrive here. Even if the primordial laws here were still too profound for his current comprehension, Li Fan could not suppress the awe that stirred his heart, a moment that evoked the sentiment, to hear the Tao in the morning, one could die content by evening. The space was filled with colorful particles colliding, forming mesmerizing sights. Crisscrossing threads permeated the space like a massive weaving machine, crafting the birth of a world. Li Fan remained enthralled by this magnificent sight for a long time before reluctantly pulling himself away. While he gained no clear insights, his soul felt as though it had been bathed in warm water, profoundly refreshed and inexplicably elevated. Amid his joy, Li Fan did not forget his purpose. Seize the essence of heaven and earth to form a nascent soul. His eyes gleamed with determination. For a brief moment, he considered taking the root of heaven and earth and transforming it into his own nascent soul's cave heaven. Such an achievement, combined with his half-formed truth, Tao foundation, would allow him to freely shape his personal domain of laws as he advanced. He envisioned conjuring mythical constructs such as latent dragons, volcanoes, and divine eyes, all upon gathering the necessary information. But alas, my foundation is too shallow. This isn't just a snake trying to swallow an elephant, it's an ant attempting to devour one, Li Fan muttered with self-mockery. After observing a little longer, he dismissed his reckless notion. An ant swallowing an elephant would only lead to its demise. Perhaps, after reaching the Tao integration realm and gaining a deeper understanding of the principles of heaven and earth, he could return to attempt this feat. For now, it was more prudent to focus on the 5 elements great cave heaven, forming nearby. Having spent some time here, Li Fan began noticing peculiarities. The forced relocation of the original 5 elements cave heaven seemed to have triggered a reaction. The root of heaven and earth was weaving a new cave heaven in its place. In that case, all I need is patience. A newborn cave heaven is weak and easier to subdue. Moreover, I don't need to worry about its strength impacting my combat power after ascension. The 5 elements cave heaven, being unified and self-sustaining, will endlessly evolve. Having formulated a plan, Li Fan exhaled in relief. Ignoring the outside world, he immersed himself in observing the birth of the cave heaven. Initially, he believed that the process would be as arduous as childbirth, a lengthy and challenging undertaking. But clearly, applying human logic to the ways of heaven and earth would only lead to errors. The 5 elements great cave heaven was forming far faster than he anticipated. The collisions of particles became increasingly frequent, akin to fireworks exploding before his eyes. Gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. Li Fan sensed the emergence of these 5 elemental energies within the space. Yet, they remained contained, not dispersing chaotically. Although his eyes could not perceive the cave heaven's actual formation, Li Fan could sense it indirectly through the energy shifts in the root of heaven and earth. As the cave heaven's embryonic form drew closer to completion, Li Fan grew increasingly excited. But at this moment, he noticed his body's lines starting to unravel into the surroundings. Li Fan speculated that the energy consumption from weaving the 5 elements cave heaven had caused the root of heaven and earth to attempt replenishment by absorbing whatever it could. As an intruder, he became the first target. Should he seize the 5 elements cave heaven now and advance to the nascent soul realm, or retreat and wait for it to fully form in the void of Tianling Prefecture before taking action? Hesitation filled his mind, but soon, Li Fan made his decision. While there was a risk of disintegration here, at least there was no external interference. In the void of Tianling Prefecture, patrolled by cultivators of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, the energy fluctuations of advancing from golden core to nascent soul would certainly not go unnoticed. No matter how eloquent his explanations, it was unlikely he could deceive them. I'll give it a try. If I fail, I'll simply come back another time. With that resolve, Li Fan stopped resisting, allowing the space to absorb his essence. Like threads being pulled from a spool, his form visibly shrank. Yet, without fear, he used this force to propel himself toward the location of the newborn cave heaven. Above the root of heaven and earth, 5 distinct orbs of light began to coalesce. Energy nodes within the crisscrossing threads exploded one by one, stabilizing the 5 orbs further. As Li Fan approached, with only half his body remaining, he arrived before the orbs of light. Perhaps it was due to the root of heaven and earth fearing damage to the newly formed five elements cave heaven. When Li Fan approached the 5 clusters of light, the external suction force abruptly lessened. This prevented him from completely disintegrating in a short amount of time. At this moment, although Li Fan's body was reduced to half of its original size, he still retained all his limbs. However, his overall stature had shrunk, making him look like a 7 or 8-year-old child. It was both comical and eerie. Fortunately, this did not affect his ability to move. He quietly gazed at the flickering 5-colored clusters of light in the distance. Instead of hastily using a secret technique to devour them, he carefully observed. The root of heaven and earth was weaving energy and laws of the same attribute into the 5 elemental domains. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, through flickering flashes below. These newly born, fragile elemental domains gradually became more complete and resilient. If this space were viewed as a womb nurturing life, then these 5 elements cave heaven would be like embryos just beginning to take form, Li Fan thought. Now existing in a line-based form, Li Fan's perception of the surrounding laws was far sharper than when he was in human form. Witnessing the initial formation of the cave heaven, insights flooded his mind. In his previous life, when the 5 elements great cave heaven, that had been relocated out of the city was eventually annihilated due to the imbalance of the 5 elements, Li Fan was able to realize that the 5 elements of the 5 elements great cave heaven were not in harmony with each other. Li Fan had personally witnessed the terrifying, near-apocalyptic black and white vortex. Now, seeing the birth of the 5 elements, he noticed an unexpected similarity between the two. Life and destruction. Life is the beginning of destruction, destruction is the source of life, Li Fan murmured, seemingly enlightened. I used the principle of the 5 elements mutual generation, endlessly cycling, to create the Great 5 Elements Annihilation Sword, based on the methods of Ink Kill and Heaven Calamity. But this principle of life and destruction, his thoughts raced to their peak. Without any external aid, Li Fan appeared to enter a state of epiphany. He stood motionless beside the clusters of 5-colored light, as still as a statue. Yet his body reacted instinctively. When stray particles occasionally hurtled toward the 5 elements cave heaven and threatened to pierce through him, his body twisted bizarrely, evading the particles with ease. After avoiding danger, his body instantly reverted to its original form. Meanwhile, Li Fan remained immersed in contemplation, oblivious to his movements. Time passed. Gradually, the 5-colored clusters of light revealed more intricate details. Oceans, molten fire, forests. Various postnatal creations of the 5 elements began to form within the cave heaven. It was like an embryo maturing over 10 months, transforming from an indistinct cluster into a fully developed infant. Distinct scenes started evolving within the cave heaven. The radiance enveloping the cave heaven's exterior began to retract inward, flowing back into its interior. The light, akin to a perfect natural supplement, was absorbed, accelerating the transformation of the scenes within by hundreds or thousands of times. A faint rumbling echoed. The cave heaven itself began to grow, expanding outward. It expanded until it touched other cave heaven, halting its growth only then. The internal force driving its growth, however, did not vanish. Amidst the creaking and pressing sounds, the 5 cave heaven intertwined and merged into a natural formation, inseparable from one another. The 5 elements cave heaven was on the verge of forming completely. Excellent. At this moment, Li Fan finally awakened. The pure line-based form of his face revealed no discernible expression of joy. Yet clearly, he had gained much from this experience. This divine ability is not suitable for use here. I'll address it once I leave. For now, I must focus on the task at hand. Li Fan reviewed the recorded imagery in his Tao Deviation Stone, which captured the moments he had missed during his epiphany, and nodded to himself. My guess was correct. The 5 elements cave heaven has not yet completely detached from the root of heaven and earth. Just like a mother's natural instinct to protect her offspring, any attempt to devour it would undoubtedly trigger a full-scale attack from the root of heaven and earth. Even a Tao integration cultivator would perish in this domain. My only chance is the fleeting moment when the 5 elements cave heaven separates from the mother body but has not yet descended into the void of the Tianling prefecture. Li Fan understood this with clarity, free of any joy or sorrow, as he awaited that critical moment. For other cultivators, missing such an opportunity would be a lifelong regret. Even with outstanding mental fortitude, they might still feel some anxiety. But for Li Fan, endowed with the truth ability, it was merely one of countless, ordinary, attempts. Thus, his heart was undisturbed. Like an exceptional hunter, he patiently and quietly awaited his prey. It was unclear how much time passed. The previously vivid cave heaven scenes gradually grew translucent. In the root of heaven and earth only the circular outlines of the 5 interconnected cave heaven remained, suspended in space. Boom! The 5 elements cave heaven began to tremble violently. Even the internal space of the root of heaven and earth shook incessantly. It seemed as if the 5 elements cave heaven were trying to break free of its mother's constraints. In Li Fan's vision, the interwoven lines grew distorted. Ping! A sound like a snapping string echoed. Li Fan noticed that a line seemed to break out of thin air around the 5 elements cave heaven. Even though it disappeared in an instant, he was sure it wasn't an illusion. Indeed, the snapping sound repeated like a chain reaction. Above the 5 elements cave heaven, countless broken lines swayed in the wind, dissolving into nothingness in moments. The cave heaven's trembling intensified. The time is now. At that moment, Li Fan's body completely disintegrated. Twisting, wriggling lines shielded the golden core in his dantian as they sped toward the 5 elements cave heaven. This seemed to alert the root of heaven and earth. As Li Fan advanced, the dissolution rate of his fine lines accelerated. Yet it couldn't stop him from drawing closer. When the 5 elements cave heaven finally broke free from the root of heaven and earth, Li Fan's golden core began to crack. It appeared on the verge of shattering but somehow held together. From the cracks emerged writhing tentacles, menacingly reaching for the 5 elements cave heaven like ravenous serpents. These tentacles also represented the root of heaven and earth. Not the primordial creation root of this domain. Rather, it is the root of heaven and earth that the cultivators of the world have formed within their bodies according to the new method of the immortal ancestor. Was it a coincidence? Or perhaps when the Dharma-transmitting immortal ancestor created the new cultivation method, they truly referenced and imitated the primordial creation of the world. In any case, to solve the issue where cultivators without spiritual roots could not practice cultivation, a creation driven by human negative emotions was developed to forcibly extract the energy of heaven and earth. This creation was also named the root of heaven and earth. Although they share the same name, the two are worlds apart. If the original root of heaven and earth, symbolizing the beginning of creation, was sacred and solemn, then the new root of heaven and earth, which plunders the heavens and allows everyone to cultivate, feels somewhat sinister. This ominous nature could perhaps be inferred from its external form. Countless wriggling tendrils, numbering in the hundreds or even thousands, these were the root filaments of the root of heaven and earth. At this moment, the tendrils seemed almost sentient as they extended toward the 5 elements cave heaven, instinctively searching for the most suitable place to root and invade. The newly formed 5 elements cave heaven seemed to sense the threat to its existence. The realm trembled, emitting vibrant lights in an attempt to repel the invasive, foreign objects. But it was futile. The protective effects of the realm's light were negligible against the tendrils. Only a small fraction of them was destroyed, a loss so minor it was insignificant. The remaining black tendrils advanced unhindered, infiltrating the cave heaven like countless needles, silently embedding themselves deep into it. The cave heaven roared, emitting strange sounds akin to cries of agony. But it could not stop the ever-growing tendrils, which wrapped around and engulfed the realm tighter and tighter. The light faded, and darkness descended. Watching the scene of the cave heaven being devoured, Li Fan, the orchestrator of it all, could not help but feel a chill in his heart. The immortal ancestor's new method is indeed eerie, he murmured to himself. It doesn't look like the righteous path at all. Still, Li Fan was not one to overthink. No matter how ominous the new method seemed, it was the only cultivation path available to him. Throwing aside his doubts, Li Fan focused on the cave heaven now enshrouded in writhing darkness. Through the countless tendrils, which felt like extensions of his own body, Li Fan could vividly perceive the state of the celestial realm. The cave heaven's strength was being drained, its resistance growing weaker. From the tendrils, an indescribable energy flowed, a life force several times more refined than the essence he had sensed during his cultivation of the creation furnace technique. This vigorous vitality, extracted from the cave heaven, continuously surged into Li Fan's body. Even after absorbing just a fraction of this pure vitality, Li Fan felt an astonishing realization. With such energy, even if he were dismembered and reduced to mere scraps of flesh, as long as some part of his body remained, he could regenerate an entirely new one. Rebirth from a single drop of blood. Immortality. This legendary divine ability, said to be accessible only to the most powerful ancient cultivators, was now being achieved through this cunning method. The immortal ancestor. Li Fan sighed in awe. Sensing the moment was right, Li Fan finally took action, advancing to the final step of forming his nascent soul. His already partially dissolved body completely liquefied into black essence, which flowed through the tendrils and invaded the five elements cave heaven. Li Fan felt his existence splitting into countless fragments, yet somehow remaining unified. Each fragment had the same goal, to seize and take full control of the cave heaven. It was an extraordinary sensation. What had once been an elevated realm beyond the human body now felt like an equal life form. What had once been the intangible heavens now seemed like a tangible, conquerable entity. As Li Fan's invasion deepened, the cave heaven's struggles weakened, until they faded altogether. Tianling Prefecture, beyond the five elements void. Huh, did you hear something just now? A golden core cultivator on watch duty suddenly looked up, staring into the pitch-black void overhead. Old son, you must be imagining things again, his lazy companion scoffed. I've told you before, take a leave and get some rest. After all these battles and so much death, it's a miracle you're not mad already. Yet you volunteered for watch duty here. Old son ignored the mockery, his gaze still fixed on the void, his expression grim. After a moment of hesitation, he flew to the edge of the void to investigate further. Crazy old fool, the other cultivator muttered under his breath, stretching lazily and watching Old Sun with amusement. As expected, after searching for a long time, Old Sun found nothing unusual and reluctantly returned to the ground. Well, I told you it was just your imagination, the companion jeered. This desolate place is a wasteland, who'd even bother attacking it? Honestly, I don't know why we're even stationed here. The higher-ups get to relax, while we suffer here in misery. Old Sun didn't respond, his focus still on the void above, his brows furrowed. Meanwhile, hidden in the sky, Li Fan observed Old Sun and felt a flicker of surprise. This Sun fellow's spiritual sense is remarkably sharp. He almost noticed me. Although Li Fan could easily subdue them given his now superior cultivation, he didn't want to stir trouble in the current sensitive climate. The 10,000 Immortal Alliance remained on high alert after the recent war, and any disturbance could ignite fresh turmoil. Choosing discretion, Li Fan memorized Old Sun's appearance before preparing to leave. However, as he began to depart, he overheard their conversation again. Hey, Old Sun, did you hear? Zhang de Biao's struck it rich lately. Isn't he in charge of post-war cleanup operations? Yeah, and guess what? All those corpses littering the battlefield in Tianling Prefecture. He's pocketed all the loot for himself. Chapter 584. Old Sun furrowed his brow slightly and said, it's better not to spread baseless rumors. No matter what, they were brave warriors who sacrificed their lives honorably for the Immortal Alliance. How could the higher-ups allow despicable individuals to defile their corpses? The lazy cultivator immediately showed some discontent. How is it baseless? I saw it with my own eyes. That Zhang de Biao kid, using his appointment from the Immortal Alliance, blatantly led a group to gather the corpses. Storage rings, usable magical treasures, weren't they quietly taken away by them? I even heard that residual golden cores and fragments of cave heaven within the corpses were dug out by these people. You've been on the battlefield yourself. You know how brutal the battle in Tianling Prefecture was. Those bodies were almost all incomplete and disfigured. How else could they be collected? They were all burned to ashes, leaving only a bit of powder as proof. Who would notice? As the saying goes, if the people don't speak up, the officials won't act. Ordinary cultivators are mostly loners. If they die, they die. Who would really care? The lazy cultivator rambled on incessantly, with no regard for his words, while Old Sun's face gradually turned somber. Suddenly, the lazy cultivator felt a chill rise behind him. Seeing the expression on Old Sun's face, he inexplicably shuddered and instinctively shut his mouth. Only when Old Sun's piercing gaze finally moved away from him did the lazy cultivator let out a sigh of relief, feeling as though a weight had been lifted from his chest. Having grown accustomed to Old Sun's usual demeanor, he had almost forgotten the legendary stories surrounding this man. Old Sun's full name was Sun Qi. Though he appeared to be an ordinary golden core stage cultivator like the others, with a humble and good-natured demeanor, Sun Qi was, in fact, a fearsome figure. A native cultivator of Tianling Prefecture, Sun Qi had been conscripted at the beginning of the Great War. For reasons unknown, whether sheer luck or something else, while countless nascent soul cultivators perished in the war, this seemingly insignificant golden core cultivator had managed to survive. Someone who carved a bloody path through mountains of corpses and seas of blood naturally exuded an aura of dread. Though usually concealed, when provoked, his rage was enough to terrify anyone. The lazy cultivator, recognizing this, wisely decided not to provoke the old master further. Meanwhile, Li Fan, who had been observing from above and in the shadows, noticed Sun Qi's gaze sweep over his hiding spot. His interest in this man grew even stronger. With a faint smile, Li Fan activated the formless killing intent and locked onto Sun Qi. Watching Sun Qi's expression shift from suspicion to alarm as he searched his surroundings but found nothing, Li Fan chuckled inwardly. Leaving Sun Qi aside for now, Li Fan stealthily flew to a desolate mountain range, seemingly flattened by a heavenly force. As was his habit, he dug deep underground and excavated a secret chamber. Sealing the chamber, Li Fan sat down and began to inspect his current state. Name: Li Fan. Cultivation realm: early nascent soul biological age, 34,999, heaven-scorned psychological age, 1,335 9,999. Void fusion energy progress, 200%. Anchor energy progress, 0%. Current number of anchors, 3. Available anchors, 1. Bound items, 1000 mechanisms Jade Cosmos Golden Sutra. Tie-in boat, stop step remnant steel damage. 10,000 essence blood, Gao deviation stone. Techniques: Xuanwang heart refining mantra, Cloudwater illusion dream technique. Body transformation into Tao, mysterious true spirit transformation. Melting furnace of 10,000 forms technique. Creation furnace technique, mountain sitting technique. Divine abilities: chaos, reverse 5 elements of sword creation and destruction. Cycle of life and death, formless killing intent. Binding insects, clouds swarm sword slash, heaven overturning palm. Phew, Li Fan gently exhaled a breath of turbid air. He felt an immense, pure vitality surging throughout his body, nourishing his physical form. Spiritual energy flowed endlessly, boundless and infinite. Within his dantian, where the golden core had once been, the faint outlines of 5 interconnected domains, cave heavens, could now be seen. So this is the nascent soul stage. Advancing in one leap feels like overturning the heavens and the earth. To test the difference from his previous golden core stage, Li Fan unleashed the most powerful divine ability he currently mastered. Using his hand as a pen, he wrote in midair, simultaneously sensing the changes in his body. He inscribed the upper left stroke of the character, Chaos. Luan, and still felt ample strength remaining. An endless stream of spiritual energy and vitality surged from the cave heavens, supporting the immense consumption of the Chaos glyph technique while keeping his body from collapsing. Li Fan continued writing. In an instant, half of the character was complete. Within the underground chamber, the surrounding soil was influenced, rising and trembling unceasingly. Countless particles moved like ranks of mortal soldiers. Upon closer inspection, the vibration frequency of each grain was entirely unique. What seemed orderly was, in truth, chaos in disguise. Li Fan squinted slightly, but his hand, suspended midair, abruptly stopped. I understand now, he murmured. Having reached the nascent soul stage, I no longer need to fear damaging my body. At last, I can fully unleash this ultimate strike. However, it still cannot be used recklessly in succession. Otherwise, Li Fan sensed the faint tremors within his 5-element cave heavens, a solemn look flashing in his eyes. The power of the chaos is truly terrifying. As the caster, even I, possessing 5-element cave heavens, face such backlash. For an ordinary nascent soul cultivator, even a slight contact could immediately cause their nascent soul cave heavens to collapse. I wonder, though, if a soul transformation cultivator could withstand it. The Chaos Glyph technique was a realization Li Fan had comprehended within the enigmatic white mist domain. It was profoundly mysterious. As his cultivation advanced, Li Fan increasingly sensed the extraordinary nature of the character, Chaos. Even my crude imitation holds such power. I can't imagine how terrifying the true Chaos Glyph technique must be. It seems to exceed the limits of power a regular cultivator can control. Could it be? Li Fan frowned, deep in thought. After a moment, he set aside his musings, focusing his gaze on the reverse 5 elements of sword creation and destruction listed on his returning true divine ability panel. The reverse 5 elements of sword creation and destruction was a divine ability he had comprehended by observing the scene of the roots of heaven and earth, weaving the five-element cave heavens and combining it with his understanding of the convergence of the five elements from his previous life. It incorporated the essence of the Grand Five Elements Annihilation Sword, possessing not only overwhelming destructive power but also the ability to create life from nothingness. Casually, Li Fan picked up a dying insect nearby, one that had been severely affected by the residual force of the Chaos Glyph technique. A gentle, milky white light emanated from his palm. Moments later, bathed in the radiant light, the insect miraculously regained vitality. It flipped over, scrambled away from Li Fan's hand, and fled in haste. Li Fan paid no attention to the lucky creature that had escaped death. Instead, he thoughtfully remarked, reviving the dying is merely a minor skill. Other medical techniques can easily achieve this. The true brilliance of the reverse five elements of sword creation and destruction lies in its power to create. Taking a spirit stone from his storage ring, he held it in his left hand. With his right hand, he emitted radiant light continuously. After half a day, as the light dissipated, a spirit stone identical to the one in his left hand slowly appeared. Chapter 585. Of course, the resemblance is merely in appearance. On the surface of the Spirit Stone, the restrictions jointly inscribed by the 10,000 Immortal Alliance and the Five Elders Association were something Li Fan could not replicate for the time being. At the moment, my creations are limited to simple objects like spirit stones, which are purely composed of spiritual energy. Anything with a slightly more complex structure is beyond my capability. Even so, Li Fan was extremely delighted in his heart. Because this signified a promising start. In the future, as his cultivation level continued to rise and his skills became increasingly refined, it wouldn't be impossible for him to create objects out of thin air. Breaking through to the nascent soul realm was a significant leap in power. However, a pressing issue now confronted Li Fan and demanded his immediate attention. He had no technique to practice. The mountain-sitting technique he had secretly learned from He Zhenghao was merely a golden core realm cultivation method. After stepping into the nascent soul realm, the feedback to his cultivation that once flowed like a gentle stream had nearly disappeared. It was evident that the technique no longer provided him with any benefit. Although he had accumulated substantial cultivation from previous efforts, which helped solidify his newly attained realm, he could not delay resolving this issue for too long. The sooner, the better. Fortunately, Li Fan had already devised countermeasures. The three strategies. 1. The middle strategy. Naturally, the middle option involved using the reward offered by Immortal Sage Jicheng to gain access to the law derivation jade, enabling him to deduce the subsequent parts of the mountain-sitting technique. In his previous life, Immortal Sage Jicheng had been ambushed by the Five Elders Association's Dao integration cultivators during the 10,000 Immortal Alliance's plan to uncover hidden spies using the plan of the Heavenly Sovereign of Reality and Illusion. This betrayal ultimately led to the sage's demise. In this lifetime, Li Fan couldn't guarantee the same events would unfold. 2. The lower strategy. The Audience Law Jade Plaque, though exceedingly rare and typically awarded only to cultivators who rendered great service to the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, wasn't a unique or priceless treasure. Given Li Fan's current resources, he could potentially acquire one by spending a significant amount of contribution points. However, doing so would be conspicuous and might expose his identity, attracting the attention of interested parties. He feared that once he obtained the technique, he might have to escape for real by using truth. Thus, this was only a last resort. 3. The upper strategy. This entirely depended on opportunity. That is, Li Fan comprehending it on his own. After several lifetimes practicing the mountain-sitting technique, Li Fan considered himself second to none in understanding this technique. His cultivation process had provided fleeting moments of insight that he had carefully accumulated over time. With his profound foundation, devoting some time might allow him to deduce the subsequent portions of the mountain-sitting technique independently. Ultimately, the law derivation jade could deduce techniques because of its ability to explore infinite possibilities. While it could analyze and create techniques with unmatched depth and insight, it could not fully comprehend Li Fan himself. Furthermore, Li Fan would never expose all his secrets to a mystical artifact that still seemed bound by the restraints of the immortal ancestor and had to work tirelessly to maintain its own survival. Everything depends on how things unfold next. During this process, I might even steer events a bit further. The 10,000 Immortal Alliance is searching for an internal spy. Why not take advantage of this opportunity? Li Fan narrowed his eyes, calculating in his heart. After a long time, he finally stood up. Having broken through to a new realm, he had examined the changes in his body for now. As for the doubling of his biological and psychological age limits displayed on the truth panel, such details no longer mattered to Li Fan. To him, it was a triviality. As long as his cultivation continues to progress, these things will naturally grow alongside it, so Li Fan doesn't need to worry about them. Perhaps only when he faces the chasm between the Tao integration and longevity immortal realms in the future will he turn his attention to them again. Compared to the numerical limit on lifespan, Li Fan found the 2 words marked afterward, heaven's scorn, to be more intriguing. After some reflection, and according to the explanation of truth, Li Fan learned that although the theoretical maximum biological lifespan was 999 years, due to the hatred of this world's will, the actual lifespan that cultivators could achieve was far less than this figure. This matched the current state of cultivators in the Xuanwang realm, as far as Li Fan knew. However, he wasn't worried about this matter. Given his storm-stirring style of behavior, no matter the lifetime, it was unlikely that he would live to the average lifespan of a cultivator. His true lifespan was, in essence, his psychological age. Therefore, for Li Fan, making the most efficient use of each lifetime's time was the most appropriate approach. Heaven's scorn, Li Fan sneered internally. Without thinking further, he slightly opened his mouth. He transferred all the items from his storage ring into his own cave heaven, leaving only some ordinary objects in the ring to avoid suspicion. Then, he quietly left the underground chamber. Instead of hurrying back to Kongyan, he lingered in Tianling Prefecture to investigate the Zhang de Biao he had heard about earlier. That's right, Li Fan had his sights set on the remains of fallen cultivators on the Tianling Prefecture battlefield. It wasn't due to any particular eccentricity but to unlock new truth anchors points. Previously, Li Fan had used fragments of a golden core to charge the last anchor point. However, despite all his efforts afterward, truth seemed to disdain the quality of the golden core fragments purchased from the Tianshuan mirror, showing no reaction to them. Li Fan speculated that the next anchor point might require a complete golden core to unlock. But where would one find a golden core cultivator willing to sell their own core? Neither the Tianshuan mirror nor the civilian markets had such items for sale. As a result, Li Fan had never had the opportunity to unlock a new anchor point. But now, perhaps, the opportunity had come. The war in Tianling Prefecture had claimed countless cultivators. Even though they were not the main forces in the battle, the number of fallen golden core cultivators was undoubtedly significant. Golden core cultivators, unlike nascent soul cultivators, did not possess a cave heaven dharma domain to support them or reconstruct their bodies. If vital areas such as the head or heart were suddenly injured and they failed to react in time to sustain themselves with spiritual energy or receive timely treatment, they would die. Thus, it was quite likely that some of those corpses contained intact golden cores. This Zhang de Biao profited from the dead, and one could tell just by hearing his name that he was a greedy, unscrupulous individual. It shouldn't be difficult to purchase some golden cores from him. Li Fan calculated his plans with precision, but he encountered difficulties right from the first step. After searching all over Tianling Prefecture, he couldn't find Zhang de Biao's whereabouts. It was said that he had been in Tianling City just a few days ago, but recently, no one had seen him. According to rumors, Zhang de Biao had previously boasted to his confidants that he had taken on a huge deal. It was unclear if he had gone off to complete this big transaction. Cultivators, entire beings or treasures. It's not strange for someone to have the same idea about me as I do about others. After all, compared to the effort of grasping the laws of the heavens, directly seizing a ready-made golden core is much quicker. But if it's something that can be called a major business? A flicker of doubt passed through Li Fan's mind. Buying large quantities of cultivators, corpses, what are they planning to do? Li Fan didn't intend to delve too deeply into the other party's motives. However, their secretive actions, coupled with Zhang de Biao's prolonged absence, hinted that something ominous might have already occurred. Even though it's challenging to silently kill a cultivator in the Xuanwang realm due to the phenomena accompanying their death, making someone vanish without a trace is an entirely different matter. There are countless ways to achieve it. Take Zhou Qingong, for example. He's still lying at the bottom of the Kongyan Sea, a prime example. As Li Fan hesitated, contemplating whether to spend some contribution points to have someone investigate Zhang de Biao further, an unfamiliar cultivator unexpectedly arrived at his door. Since Li Fan had been operating under a completely new identity, using the alias, UG, during his recent activities in Tianling Prefecture, he immediately realized that the visitor's purpose must be related to Zhang de Biao's disappearance. Interesting. Let's see what they want. In the courtyard of the discussing Dao Tower, Li Fan met the visitor. It was a gray-robed cultivator. Short, frail, and hunched, the figure's face was etched with deep wrinkles, and he hobbled as though a gust of wind could knock him down. As the stranger approached, Li Fan faintly detected a putrid, rancid odor emanating from him. Heh, heh, heh. Fellow Taoist you, I heard you're looking for Zhang de Biao. Could it be that he has something you need? The gray-robed cultivator wasted no time, speaking in an eerie, raspy voice. Li Fan squinted his eyes, scrutinizing the visitor. Though the person seemed to possess only golden core-level cultivation, Li Fan was almost certain it was merely an illusion. The faint yet persistent sense of danger emanating from the stranger reminded Li Fan that this gray-robed cultivator was anything but simple. How should I address you, fellow Taoist? Li Fan asked politely, bowing slightly without directly answering the question. Taoist Exiamu, the gray-robed cultivator replied succinctly. Li Fan scanned his memory and found no record of such a person. After a moment's pause, he lowered his voice and nodded. Indeed, I need some golden cores from cultivators. The more intact, the better. The higher the level of law they contain, the better. Price is not an issue, Li Fan added, emphasizing his sincerity. A glimmer of light flashed in Taoist Exiamu's eyes as he reached out, producing a golden core that shimmered with alternating blue and red hues. Fellow Taoist you, what do you think of this one? Li Fan's heart stirred. He accepted the golden core and examined it closely. It appeared freshly harvested from a cultivator, with faint traces of bloodstains still visible. Sensing it with his cultivation, Li Fan discovered that the core contained insights related to wood and fire laws. Using his truth ability, the hint that it can be absorbed came through. What's the price? Li Fan asked. 30,000 contribution points, Taoist Exiamu said with a low voice. Perhaps fearing that Li Fan might consider it too expensive, he quickly added, I also have single law golden cores available, which are cheaper, only 15,000 contribution points each. Of course, if you need a larger quantity, the price is negotiable. Oh, and payment must be in equivalent spirit stones. I don't accept direct transfers of contribution points, he added as Li Fan hesitated. Li Fan wasn't concerned about the price but found Taoist Exiamu's sudden appearance suspicious. Moreover, the blatant sale of golden cores, something so taboo, was presented as casually as if it were common merchandise. Even more concerning, Li Fan was using an entirely fabricated identity. Taoist Exiamu knew nothing of his background, yet acted so brazenly. Was he truly not afraid of Li Fan being a member of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, secretly investigating and enforcing the law? 28,000 works too, Taoist Exiamu offered, lowering the price when Li Fan remained silent. Feigning hesitation, Li Fan finally nodded. Deal. Pretending to store it in his ring, he secretly absorbed it using truth absorption instead. The truth absorption panel showed a progress increase of 0.5% for unlocking an anchor point. At this rate, I'll need a total of 200 complete golden cores, assuming they're dual law cores like this one. If they're single law cores, the number will be even higher. Conventional methods won't suffice to collect so many. Unless I embrace evil and become a demon, slaughtering golden core cultivators indiscriminately. This thought crossed Li Fan's mind momentarily before he dismissed it. Fellow Taoist Exiamu, Li Fan coughed lightly, not requesting another transaction but instead voicing his doubts. To his surprise, Taoist Exiamu responded nonchalantly, rest assured, our golden cores are nothing like the subpar ones Zhang de Biao scavenges. The origins of ours are safe and reliable, absolutely no concerns. Even if the 10,000 Immortal Alliance investigates, there won't be any problems. You can use them without worry. He patted his chest confidently, with such force that Li Fan almost thought he might collapse from the effort. Impossible. The answer was far beyond Li Fan's expectations, and he couldn't hide his disbelief. This golden core clearly looks freshly extracted from a cultivator. Such an inhumane act wouldn't just alarm the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, even the Five Elders Association wouldn't let it slide. If it weren't for my urgent need, I wouldn't engage in such a conscience-betraying act. Li Fan declared righteously. Taoist Exiamu sneered, not bothering to refute Li Fan's theatrics, but suddenly asked, what if the cultivators volunteered for this? Volunteer. Li Fan froze. That's impossible. Shocked by the suggestion, he stared at Taoist Exiamu with wide eyes. Where there's demand, there's a market. For as long as the Xuanwang realm's order has been re-established, our line of work has never been anything new, Taoist Exiamu explained, shaking his head. Scavenging golden cores from corpses, like what Zhang Debiao does, is far too inefficient. Not to mention where we could even find so many fallen golden core cultivators, corpses. After a cultivator dies, their Tao law returns to the heavens. While the golden core is a condensation of a cultivator's understanding of the laws of heaven and earth, it still relies on the treasures of heaven and earth as its foundation. Once the Tao returns to the heavens, the treasures lose their essence, and the methods condensed within the golden core lose their foundation. Not only does the quality of the golden core deteriorate significantly, but over time, it risks disintegrating and cannot be preserved for long. It seemed that this topic fell squarely within his area of expertise, as Taoist Exiamu spoke with great confidence. A rare light appeared on his weathered face, and the tight wrinkles around his features unconsciously relaxed. But all of these problems and troubles can be easily solved as long as the cultivator consents. If a cultivator extracts their golden core while still alive, it does not trigger the mechanisms of heaven's malice. With the treasures of heaven and earth at the core, the golden core can be preserved indefinitely. Though the cultivator would lose their cultivation and become no different from immortal, it's just the golden core stage, rebuilding their cultivation isn't too difficult. If resources are sufficient, it would take no more than 10 years to form a new golden core. Well, while the production cycle is still a bit long, given our current number of cultivators, we could easily achieve a harvest of several hundred golden cores annually. The Taoist Exiamu spoke these eerie words with an unsettling calmness. Stable, long-term, and harmless. Can that brat Zhang Debiao, who stumbled upon luck, even compare to this? He can't. So, my friend, if you have a need, you must prioritize working with us. Taoist Exiamu looked at Li Fan, his eyes gleaming with fervor. Li Fan, however, was clearly unconvinced by such a simple pitch and shook his head repeatedly. Don't try to deceive me, my friend. What cultivator would willingly allow their golden core to be extracted every decade or so? Just thinking about it is terrifying. Misunderstanding. The Taoist Exiamu quickly interrupted Li Fan. We now have techniques to extract golden cores painlessly and harmlessly. Not only do cultivators not feel any pain, but they even experience a unique pleasure. In fact, I know of someone who, in pursuit of the thrill of having their golden core extracted, immediately resumed cultivation each time after losing their core. That person has now become our most efficient cultivator, producing a dual-method golden core every 3 to 4 years. Taoist Exiamu spoke with such enthusiasm that he seemed completely oblivious to the absurdity of his words. Even someone as detached as Li Fan couldn't help but feel a chill watching the Taoist Exiamu. So, all of your concerns are entirely unnecessary. We have been examined and certified by the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. Think about it, we have to supply the Alliance with a certain number of materials every year. If there were any quality issues, wouldn't the Alliance be the first to hold us accountable? Rest assured, my friend. Li Fan narrowed his eyes. The 10,000 Immortal Alliance knows about what you do. Why haven't I heard of it before? The Taoist Exiamu mumbled in a low voice, our ideas are simply too advanced. The Alliance believes that if made public, it would surely lead to misunderstanding among the masses. That's why it remains undisclosed. After all, ordinary people can't comprehend it. But someone like you, my friend, surely can understand, right? Taoist Exiamu looked at Li Fan with eager anticipation. Understanding is one thing, but it's still hard to fully accept right away, Li Fan said ambiguously. Taoist Exiamu seemed delighted to have found a kindred spirit, clapping his hands in praise. I knew it, I didn't misjudge you, you're a person of great wisdom. He suddenly stood up, pacing excitedly as he muttered. The sorrow of harming one's kind is but natural law. It's normal for you, my friend, to take time to adjust your perspective. But I believe that once you see it with your own eyes, you'll quickly come around. What do you think? Would you like to visit and see for yourself? Li Fan was about to refuse outright but was suddenly overcome by an inexplicable impulse. Looking at the frail and aged cultivator before him and imagining the countless golden cores that might be waiting for him there, Li Fan, who needed intact golden cores to unlock anchor points, inexplicably changed his mind. Fine, there's no harm in taking a look. The moment the words left his mouth, Li Fan felt a jolt of shock. He suddenly realized that this gray-robed cultivator before him was far more dangerous than he had initially imagined. Wanting only to purchase some golden cores, Li Fan hadn't anticipated stumbling into such a troubling situation. His luck was truly awful. Cursing inwardly, Li Fan reconsidered but ultimately convinced himself to proceed. Taoist Exiamu, how do I refer to your place, and how do I get there? Li Fan asked with feigned interest. Taoist Exiamu slapped his forehead in mock annoyance. Oh, I almost forgot to introduce it. Our place is called Withering Human Life. Li Fan felt an eerie chill as the Taoist's tone and expression became momentarily sinister before returning to his usual enthusiasm. As for how to get there, just hold on to me. Li Fan obediently grabbed the Taoist Exiamu's sleeve. Hold on tight, the Taoist shouted and began chanting. The heavens hold the withering tree, life ebbs and flows under its shadow. Thick gray mist rolled in, enveloping them in an instant. Twisted shadows and eerie sounds blurred their surroundings. Despite the ominous setting, Li Fan felt no sense of danger. Instead, he was overwhelmed by a strange sense of belonging, as though he was meant to be there. When the gray fog cleared, their destination revealed itself. Here we are, my friend, Taoist Exiamu announced cheerfully. Li Fan looked up to see an enormous tree, withered and spotted, stretching toward the heavens. Its branches were covered with countless cultivators hanging like fruits. Chapter 588. A gentle breeze swept through the air, carrying a faint yet unmistakable stench of decay. The rustling of dry leaves broke the silence, as a few fluttered down from the treetops, only to vanish into nothingness before touching the ground. Li Fan distinctly saw something on the surface of the leaves. A fleeting glimpse of twisted, agonized faces. Under normal circumstances, anyone witnessing such a bizarre scene would inevitably feel a chill of terror. Yet, at this moment, in Li Fan's eyes, this place known as Withering Human Life was nothing short of enchanting. Taking a deep breath, the putrid air filled his lungs, and he found it oddly sweet. Greedily, he inhaled a few more times. He carefully observed the cultivators hanging from the trees and noticed their lifeless black eyes devoid of pupils, paired with eerie smiles on their faces. Their hair had fused with the branches, serving as ropes to suspend their bodies. Some of the cultivators still had intact clothing. Others seemed to have been hanging there for years, their clothes corroded and tattered. Rotten branches wound around their bodies, covering exposed flesh while deeply piercing their muscles and sinews. Marvelous, truly marvelous. Without needing the Taoist Exiamu to explain, Li Fan immediately understood the mechanisms of this place the moment he stepped into Withering Human Life. Facing this ghastly scene, not only did Li Fan feel no fear or vigilance, but he clapped his hands in admiration. His tone carried a hint of envy, as if he believed that all cultivators should naturally be hung upon such branches. Moreover, to have the dead tree pierce their flesh seemed to him an unimaginable honor. How is it, fellow Taoist you? Was my description exaggerated? The Taoist Exiamu, appearing more frail than ever, coughed violently for a long time before catching his breath to ask. Indeed, your words ring true. Li Fan nodded in agreement. This creation is truly extraordinary. What is the name of this tree? Staring intently at the withered giant tree, his eyes glowed with obsession. It was once called Ruamu, but now, Taoist Exiamu also raised his head, his expression unreadable. TL note. Ruamu means, a young tree, or sapling. It is known as the eternal wall of the river of life. Though the name was difficult to pronounce, the moment the Taoist Exiamu uttered it, Li Fan immediately understood its meaning. It has existed since time immemorial and will continue to exist eternally, standing tall above the river of life, like a wall that holds up the heavens. Still, I prefer its original name, Li Fan said, shaking his head. The Taoist Exiamu let out a low chuckle, unfazed. A name is but a label. As time flows and generations of living beings rise and fall, their terms for it change as well. But none of that affects its existence. For some reason, a shadow seemed to flicker through the Taoist Exiamu's eyes as he said this. Li Fan, however, agreed and replied, that may be true, but the present is no longer what it once was. Every moment spent here brought countless visions into Li Fan's mind. Naturally, he came to know much about the tree and its history. With a wistful look, he recited softly. When heaven and earth birthed life, Ruamu claimed their years. It drew their essence to bear the fruit of longevity, granting eternal life to those who consumed it. Taoist Exiamu's cloudy eyes seemed to brighten as he heard Li Fan's words, turning slightly with a glimmer of light. After a long silence, the two resumed their conversation. Fellow Taoist, you truly possess great wisdom. The Taoist Xiaomu sighed. Of the countless cultivators who have come here to witness this, few have adapted as quickly as you. Li Fan's eyes narrowed slightly, and he said in a low voice. It is not that I am wise but that others are ignorant. How are these cultivators fundamentally different from any other living creature? Trees bear fruit, flowers yield nectar. Beasts give birth to offspring, birds lay eggs. Humans consume these as sustenance, deeming it ordinary. Why, then, should they find it unacceptable when they themselves are consumed? Do they truly believe themselves to be the spirit of the heavens, the masters of all creation? Li Fan sneered. Taoist Xiaomu was momentarily taken aback, as Li Fan had preemptively voiced his own argument, leaving him momentarily speechless. In my view, it is nothing more than the law of the jungle. Li Fan continued, shaking his head. To devour now is satisfying. Should the day come when one is devoured, there should be no complaints. The way of heaven is fair, and karma spares no one. Li Fan swayed slightly, deeply immersed in his own thoughts. Taoist Xiaomu stared at Li Fan for a while before suddenly understanding. Ah, so your mindset hasn't changed, you've always thought this way. What a pity, what a pity. Taoist Xiaomu shook his head slightly. Li Fan, however, appeared indifferent, as though he hadn't heard the old man's words. He continued gazing at the withered Ruamu, as if something within it deeply captivated him. To think that such an anomaly would arise among cultivators, Taoist Xiaomu furrowed his brows, seemingly deep in thought. Cough, cough, he suddenly burst into a violent coughing fit, green blood faintly seeping from the corners of his mouth. Above him, the Ruamu trembled without wind, shedding countless withered leaves. Good riddance, good riddance. Taoist Xiaomu's face twisted with a momentary ferocity as he laughed wildly. So the heavens are fair, and even the wicked have their comeuppance. This child is useless to me here. It's better to send him back to sow chaos. Karma, everything is karma. Karma. After his outburst, Taoist Xiaomu gradually regained his composure, returning to the demeanor he had when first meeting Li Fan. Fellow Taoist, now that you've seen it for yourself, I trust you're satisfied with the quality of our products. Shall we proceed with our prior agreement? He asked with a sinister grin. Agreement? Li Fan turned, momentarily dazed. Oh, that matter. No rush, he replied, waving it off as if it were trivial. Ha ha ha. Taoist Xiaomu let out his unsettling laughter once more. This place is fascinating, but it's not where you belong. I believe the outside world, the Xuanwang realm, suits you far better. Li Fan was about to protest, but Taoist Xiaomu grabbed his shoulder. Billowing gray mist rose from the ground, quickly enveloping him. Why are you so eager to send me away, Taoist? Li Fan asked anxiously. Taoist Xiaomu sneered but did not answer. You wanted a golden core, right? Well, since I'm feeling generous, I'll gift you some for free this time. As the gray mist obscured his vision, Li Fan vaguely heard the Taoist Xiaomu's voice. His sight blurred, and he stumbled, finding himself back in the guest courtyard of the Discussing Tao Tower in Tianling Prefecture. Taoist Xiaomu, the eternal wall of the river of life, and the countless cultivators hanging from its branches had vanished as if they were never there. It all felt like a hallucination. But the withered branch lying quietly on the table served as undeniable proof. No longer under the tree's influence, Li Fan's thoughts returned to normal. Recalling his recent experience, he felt as though he had plunged into an icy abyss. Yet, fearing that the Taoist Xiaomu might still be watching, he suppressed his terror and feigned calm. Chapter 589. This was already Li Fan's sixth cup of spiritual tea. The tea was named, Spring Sun Warmth, priced at 800. Contribution points per cup. It was said that the tea tree needed to be cultivated in a cave environment with year-round dry weather, grown facing the sun. It only sprouted once every 3 years, making it extremely rare. After drinking it, a warm current would rise within one's body, creating a sensation akin to basking in sunlight. The effects lasted for several days. Yet, even this widely acclaimed tea failed to dispel the cold fear lingering in Li Fan's heart. This was the third time Li Fan, since entering the cycle of reincarnation in the Xuanwang realm, had directly faced a true powerhouse in his original form. The first time was when his clone was seen through by the heavenly doctor, who followed the connection to invade Li Fan's private space in the Tianquan mirror. The second time was during his secluded cultivation in Tianyu Prefecture, comprehending the Great Five Elements Annihilation Sword. The old fisherman, drawn by the aura of heavenly calamity within it, had unexpectedly appeared. This third encounter, however, was even more startling and caught him completely off guard. And it was far more perilous. At least the old fisherman, though mad and incoherent, bore no malice toward Li Fan. On the contrary, he had even given him a fortunate opportunity. The encounter with the heavenly doctor was Li Fan's own doing, as he had taken on a mission offering a reward of 100,000 contribution points and willingly sought out the trouble. Though he hadn't yet learned the importance of concealing his thoughts before a powerhouse, leading to his intentions being discovered, his true consciousness was clear at the time. Plus, with the truth shield protecting him, the danger had been more bark than bite. But this time, Taoist Exiamu appeared suddenly and without warning, catching Li Fan entirely unprepared. Their methods were terrifying, and even now, recalling the experience, Li Fan felt a chill of dread. Unlike the heavenly doctor's method of seeing through human hearts, the Taoist Exiamu, or rather, Ruamu, can directly distort and alter a cultivator's thoughts and perceptions. And the cultivator themselves remains oblivious to any abnormalities. No wonder the Taoist Exiamu previously claimed that the cultivators who had their golden course taken were all willing. Recalling his thoughts and reactions at the time, Li Fan felt another wave of coldness rising in his heart. He downed another cup of spring sun warmth to calm his nerves. Natural selection, this is simply the way of nature. But after following him and witnessing the place called withering human life, not only did I not sense danger or sorrow, I actually found it entirely reasonable. I even felt a desire to replace them myself. Li Fan squinted his eyes, replaying the scenes before Ruamu in his mind through the Tao deviation stone. The influence of Ruamu had dissipated by now. Though Li Fan had always regarded all living beings as tools, seeing cultivators suspended like fruit from branches still instinctively filled him with unease. This was the natural reaction he should have had. Under the Taoist Exiamu's influence, my concepts were twisted and seemingly guided toward extremes. One could say I became somewhat deranged. Li Fan didn't deny that, deep within, he might indeed harbor a faint shadow of such thoughts. But humans are complex spiritual aggregates, often harboring contradictory beliefs. A fleeting thought cannot, of course, define one's fundamental worldview. This Taoist Exiamu is highly abnormal. They seem to harbor a profound hatred for cultivators. Naturally, Li Fan didn't believe someone with Ruamu's level of cultivation would sell golden cores merely for contribution points. Abducting cultivators to join the withering human life production line might also be secondary. The primary purpose, it seemed, was likely to propagate the idea that cultivators can also be like fruit. Such heretical views would undoubtedly be rejected by the cultivator community. The 10,000 Immortal Alliance was likely monitoring and suppressing such ideologies, which was why the Taoist Exiamu couldn't act openly. Revenge, perhaps. Li Fan's eyes flickered with thought. The heavens give rise to all living things, yet Ruamu steals their longevity. It draws life to create longevity fruits, which, when consumed, grant eternal life. During the period when Ruamu controlled his thoughts, countless scenes had flashed through Li Fan's mind. He saw a towering, vibrant tree utterly unlike the current withered one. It stretched up to the heavens, verdant and brimming with life. No cultivators hung from its branches. At its crown, there were merely a few translucent, purple and gold fruits of extraordinary quality. The fruit's surface bore faint patterns, trees, mountains, exotic beasts. The markings on each purple and gold fruit were unique, with no duplicates. In those flashes of vision, Li Fan also saw that, at first, only ordinary humans stumbled upon the tree. They had no cultivation and dressed as common mortals. Only a select few lucky individuals managed to climb the tree's branches and successfully pluck the purple and gold fruits. Later, however, humans came more frequently and grew stronger. Some climbed the giant tree as though walking on flat ground. Naturally, more fruits were taken. As a result, Ruamu, once indifferent to outside intrusions, began to change. It birthed various mystical creatures on its branches as a defensive system to repel intruders seeking its fruit. This worked for a while. But the peace didn't last. When humans returned, their strength had undergone an earth-shattering transformation. They came in groups, clad in peculiar garments, capable of flight and manipulating the energy of the heavens to battle. The creatures Ruamu had spawned were no match for them. Humans seized control of Ruamu and claimed it as their own. They stationed guards and periodically harvested its fruits. Shuantian sect. The attire of the humans in those visions was distinctive and unmistakable. It bore a striking resemblance to the robes Li Fan had seen on the remains of a Xuantian sect Dharma king in senior sister Zhao's illusion. The Xuantian sect ruled over this place for a long time. When the scene shifted again, the people now appearing at Ruamu were cultivators from the 10 great immortal sects. Longevity fruit, perhaps. Li Fan glanced at the withered tree fragment on the table, his mind racing. After a long moment of reflection, his thoughts returned to the memory. During the 10 great immortal sects, occupation of Ruamu, the yield of purple and gold fruits inexplicably began to decline. The cultivators who came to harvest the fruits also seemed to come from different sects each time. What followed remained unclear. One day, dozens of cultivators with powerful auras stormed into the scene. After easily slaying the guards, they did not immediately plunder the purple and gold fruits. Instead, they stared at Ruamu, arguing over something. Their dispute grew heated but eventually reached a resolution. The subsequent scene made Li Fan's pupils contract sharply. They set up an enormous formation, sealing Ruamu within. Black chains, like long needles, pierced into the tree at various points. Soon, an unending stream of life energy was drawn out and gathered into a green ball of light in the air. Read extra chapters on greater than Spirit Stone translation. The once lush, vibrant trees began to visibly age as specks of green light continuously dissipated. During this time, the Ruamu made several attempts to fight back. The tree trembled, manifesting countless mystical creatures that fearlessly charged at the cultivators. Even the Ruamu itself lashed out with its branches like swords. However, the cultivators who had come to this place were terrifyingly powerful. All resistance was futile and was immediately suppressed. Even the Ruamu's desperate final strike, causing the purple gold fruits at its peak to wither, was salvaged by this group. Left powerless, Ruamu could only watch as its life essence was wantonly extracted. Its leaves gradually turned yellow and fell like rain. Amid thunderous roars, many branches snapped off with loud crashes. Cracks began to spread across the Ruamu's trunk, yet this group showed no signs of stopping. Their intent was clear. They would not cease until it was completely drained. Fortunately, at the critical moment, another group of cultivators arrived. A fierce battle broke out between the two factions, forcing the extraction process to halt. The newcomers successfully retrieved the condensed green light of ball from the air and departed, but not before launching a combined attack on the already devastated Ruamu. This second assault inflicted even greater damage than the forced extraction of its life energy. Massive fissures ran up the tree's trunk, causing large sections of branches to fall, their destinations unknown. The rescuers, seeing the extent of the damage, abandoned their pursuit to focus on healing the Ruamu. Thanks to their efforts, the Ruamu narrowly escaped total destruction. However, the injuries it sustained were so severe that recovery seemed impossible. From that moment on, decay and aging became the tree's constant companions. Many years later, a humanoid cultivator emerged from the Ruamu, manifesting from within its essence. The fragmented scenes witnessed in the withering human life conveyed an overwhelming amount of information. Li Fan replayed these images repeatedly through the Tao deviation stone, piecing together clues with the information he had previously gathered. Gradually, he formed a hypothesis. The cultivators who harmed the Ruamu were likely the same group who, during the Great Calamity, advocated abandoning the Xuanwang realm and fleeing far away. Judging by the power they displayed, some among them were clearly experts at the longevity immortal stage. 500 years ago, for some unknown reason, this group attempted to return to the Xuanwang realm, sparking a great conflict. Sima Chengtong once mentioned that the heavens themselves express extreme hatred for these cultivators, far more than for those of us who plunder and dominate the world. Traitors. What did they steal? Could it have been the Ruamu, the tree capable of producing fruits of longevity? Judging by their methods, there may have been something else involved. Thousands of years have passed since their departure and return. Did they ultimately fail to escape the immortal ruins, or was there another reason? Li Fan furrowed his brows in thought. The existence of the immortal ruins was no secret to the 10 immortal sects. The ruthless, decisive actions of this group implied that they had confidence in their ability to escape the Xuanwang realm. Yet, for some reason, they were forced to return. The known information was too sparse, so Li Fan decided to set this matter aside for now. Regardless, he now understood why the Ruomu harbored such deep resentment toward cultivators. Whether it was being recklessly plundered for its fruits or nearly destroyed afterward, the enmity between the Ruomu and cultivators could only be described as irreconcilable. If Li Fan had suffered such treatment, his vengeance would undoubtedly have been several times more ruthless. After the immortal ancestor imparted a new method of cultivation, the fruits of longevity no longer grant eternal life. From the Ruomu's perspective, this might actually be a blessing. In a way, the immortal ancestor may have been its savior. Without him, no matter how powerful the Ruomu was, it would still be unable to escape the fate of being exploited. Judging by its attempt to reverse the destruction of its kind, it seems the Ruomu itself has not yet reached the longevity immortal realm. However, given its incredible nature and ancient origin, its strength cannot be measured by simple Tao integration standards. Is it above Tao integration but below longevity immortal? The gap between these stages is staggeringly vast. The powerful entities Li Fan had encountered recently, the Heavenly Doctor, the Old Fisherman, and now the Ruomu, all seem to be in this intermediate realm. While this might be coincidental, it highlighted the immense difficulty of transcending the laws of the universe to achieve eternal life. Despite the abundance of talent and brilliance in the world, the path to longevity immortal under the new method remained treacherously narrow, with only a few successfully attaining it. Li Fan's gaze deepened, and he fell silent for a long time. Reflecting on this encounter, Li Fan began to reconsider his actions. Encountering the Ruomu and nearly losing my life, it was truly a matter of bad luck. I was not complacent after my recent breakthrough. This was the Tianling Prefecture city, and the villa I rented from the discussing Dao Tower should have been secure. Who could have anticipated that a cultivator dealing in dubious trades, selling golden cores, would turn out to be a powerful entity filled with malice toward humanity? This realization left Li Fan feeling helpless. He could not always hide and rely solely on his clone for action. Although useful, the clone was limited, it was weaker than his true self and could not wield the full extent of his abilities. Expecting it to reach the longevity immortal realm was unrealistic. Like being struck by lightning while walking down the street, such rare incidents shouldn't deter me from action altogether. There are situations where only my true self can act seamlessly and leave no trace behind. Still, the Ruomu's ability to manipulate and distort one's thoughts is something I must find a way to defend against. If it hadn't harbored hatred toward cultivators and glimpsed some future act of mine, intending to use me for vengeance, I might have remained trapped in its grasp indefinitely. Even with my supposedly resolute mind, I was utterly defenseless against it. In the cultivation world, there are endless treasures and techniques. Surely, I can find a method to counter such abilities. I don't need complete immunity, just enough clarity to counteract this shortcoming. Li Fan committed this task to memory, placing it as a top priority. After calming his thoughts, Li Fan finally picked up the withered Ruomu branch that had been sitting on his table. As he carefully examined it, a sense of familiarity struck him. It wasn't because he had previously encountered the Ruomu itself but rather because this branch seemed similar to the material Zhao Shuyuan had used to craft clones. Zhao Shuyuan used materials from the Ruomu tree to create his clones. Feeling a stir in his heart, Li Fan held the withered branch of the Ruomu tree in his hand and carefully attuned to it. After a long time, he seemed to understand but shook his head slightly. Similar, but different, it's as if they share the same origin, yet there are distinct differences. Furthermore, with the Taoist Exemu's deep disdain for cultivators, it's unlikely he would cooperate with Zhao Shuyuan. So, this must be. A scene suddenly flashed in Li Fan's mind. The Ruomu tree being besieged by cultivators, its trunk splitting open, and numerous branches falling from the sky. Perhaps those branches that separated back then fell into the Xuanwang realm and experienced entirely new fates. The resilience of plant life is always astonishing. Even ordinary trees can regenerate broken branches. Let alone an extraordinary being like the Ruomu tree, capable of bearing the fruit of longevity. Still, whether Zhao Shuyuan truly evolved from a fallen branch of the Ruomu tree or simply found its remnants to craft his clones, it's hard to determine for now. With a thought, Li Fan made the withered Ruomu branch in his hand sprout a new bud. In an instant, the bud grew into a tender young branch. At its tip, as if bearing fruit, hung a small golden spherical object. Li Fan's eyelids twitched. This golden fruit was, of course, the golden core that the Taoist Exemu had promised to gift him. However, the method of storage was quite peculiar. Reaching out, Li Fan tried to pluck the golden core. A faint resistance emanated from the fruit. Li Fan exerted more force, and the golden core was successfully plucked. Due to the recoil, the new branch flung backward violently and swayed in the air before abruptly retracting into the withered Ruamu branch. Before Li Fan could think further, the branch extended again, producing yet another golden core. Looking at the seemingly sentient Ruamu branch before him, Li Fan grew somber. He refrained from acting rashly and, like harvesting fruit, plucked core after core until they were all collected. The process took nearly the time of one incense stick to burn. A total of 372 golden cores. After relinquishing all its cores, the Ruamu branch fulfilled its purpose. It disintegrated into ashes, scattering into the wind. During the harvesting process, although Li Fan appeared to store the golden cores in his spatial ring, he had secretly begun absorbing them using the truth ability. As he had guessed, single-law golden cores increased the anchor's charge progress by only 0.25%, while dual-law golden cores increased it by 0.5%. However, triple-law golden cores represented a qualitative leap, each contributing 2% progress. Among the 372 cores, triple-law cores were rare, while single-law and dual-law cores constituted the majority. There were no cores with 4 or more laws. Thus, after unlocking the 5th anchor point, only 16 carefully selected golden cores remained. Li Fan's selection wasn't based solely on the number of laws in the golden core but rather their rarity. Common 5 elemental laws were inferior to those he had personally comprehended and were therefore deemed unnecessary to preserve. Meanwhile, some laws pertained to fields Li Fan knew little about, making them valuable for someone newly advanced to the nascent soul stage like himself. The nascent soul stage revolves around cultivating and refining one's cave heaven law domain. The more complete this law domain, the stronger the nascent soul cultivator's combat capabilities. When the domain aligns nearly perfectly with the external Xuanwang realm, one can begin to anticipate the soul transformation stage. Li Fan didn't know all the details yet, but he had a vague idea of the process. The so-called extracting the marrow of heaven and earth to obtain its essence refers to heaven's marrow functions similarly to human bone marrow. Human marrow's primary role is blood production, while heaven's marrow produces laws. The laws of heaven and earth, like blood in the human body, are foundational to the world's stability. Without blood, the body dies; without laws, the world collapses. By disguising one's cave heaven as part of the Xuanwang realm, one can trick heaven's marrow into bestowing its laws, thus appropriating strands of the world's natural order. However, just as human marrow also supports immunity and defense mechanisms, heaven's marrow possesses certain countermeasures. Thus, during the extraction of heaven's marrow, cultivators must be cautious of the world's backlash. Only one law can be extracted at a time, and greed must be avoided. If sacrificing heaven's soul is the bold and open method of claiming laws, then extracting heaven's marrow is the covert and cunning method employed when one's strength is insufficient. This process strengthens oneself while weakening heaven, narrowing the gap between the two. It also prepares for the eventual Tao integration process. Standing at the nascent soul stage, Li Fan replayed the extraction of heaven's marrow process in his mind, gaining deeper insights compared to when he was at the golden core stage. Truly a heavenly genius, the method of immortal ancestor is brilliant. From mimicking heaven's wonders and observing its laws, a mere mortal with no aptitude for cultivation is gradually integrated into the system of heaven and earth. Then, by stealing heaven's essence and marrow, one diminishes the gap between oneself and the cosmos. Eventually, one sacrifices heaven's soul to wrest power from it. Finally, by defying the laws of heaven, one replaces it and attains eternal life. Step by step, clear and methodical. Truly ingenious and nearly impossible to guard against. No wonder even the might of heaven was brought low by these new cultivators, forced to retaliate. Li Fan sighed again. As he revisited this cultivation path, a sudden realization struck him: it resembled something deeply familiar in his memories. Yet, as he tried to dwell on it, the fleeting inspiration vanished entirely. Even using the Tao deviation stone failed to recover the thought. A feeling of loss welled up within him. How strange. Li Fan narrowed his eyes and fell into deep contemplation. He was almost certain that this sudden insight would not have dissipated so quickly under normal circumstances. Some force must have interfered, causing the inspiration to vanish. Just like what I experienced in Senior Sister Zhao's illusion realm, he thought. In that realm, whenever I tried to cultivate, the walls of the confinement room would emit distracting and mocking noises, hindering my recovery. The restrictions of the Xuanwang realm are even subtler and harder to detect. Immortal ancestor, is this your doing? Li Fan raised his head to the heavens, his expression inscrutable. Li Fan naturally wasn't concerned that the long-hidden immortal ancestor would suddenly appear just because of a casual upward glance he made toward the sky. And then confront him, asking, "Little friend, what exactly are you looking at?" In fact, what Li Fan cared about was something entirely different. As the saying goes, the more you try to cover something up, the more obvious it becomes. Only matters of great importance prompt one to resort to all sorts of means to hide them. If someone truly didn't care, why bother with any methods of concealment? Throughout the thousands of years of the Xuanwang realm's history, countless geniuses and exceptional figures have emerged. Surely, many cultivators, like Li Fan just moments ago, must have had a stroke of serendipity, leading them to the brink of a profound realization. But all of them were inexplicably suppressed by some unseen force. This just shows that the immortal ancestor was actually a little wary of the cultivators from the Xuanwang realm understanding this matter. The immortal ancestor, wielding the power of one individual, altered the course of heaven and earth, reshaping the balance between the old and the new cultivation methods. For thousands of years, he subjugated the realm, forcing all cultivators to live as mere beasts of burden. For such a figure to harbor even a shred of fear about something, how curious. Although it might not be outright fear, there is undoubtedly a concern in their mind, Li Fan mused. Interesting. In an instant, Li Fan pieced together these insights and grew genuinely intrigued by the hidden secret behind it all. Perhaps, the way to counter the immortal ancestor lies within this mystery. A secret may be able to deceive some people forever, or all people temporarily, but it can never deceive all people forever. In the Xuanwang realm, I have plenty of time to uncover and extract it. Besides, I may not be the only one involved. Li Fan gazed at the vast sky in silence. As the saying goes, if one does not plan for eternity, they cannot even plan for a moment. The immortal ancestor of Dharma transmission, standing as the most formidable obstacle on Li Fan's path to immortality, was an adversary he would inevitably face. To stumble upon even a minor flaw in their dominion, by sheer coincidence, was indeed fortunate for Li Fan. The world is always full of such coincidences. Just like how I was suddenly captured by the Exiamu and then inexplicably released. Just like my sudden enlightenment moments ago. Such occurrences cannot be avoided. But my truth ability can minimize the negative impacts of such coincidences while amplifying their beneficial outcomes infinitely. With his thoughts surging and settling, Li Fan calmed himself after a long time and refocused his attention on the 16 golden cores before him. After pondering for a while, Li Fan decided to return to the Kanyan Sea through a teleportation formation. Reusing an old tactic, he excavated a secret chamber deep beneath the seabed trench and hid inside. This was done to avoid any potential spying by Taoist Ruamu. Whether it was an illusion or purely psychological, upon returning to the Kanyan Sea, Li Fan's heart instantly felt much more at ease. Holding his breath and calming his mind, he focused intently. Li Fan laid out the remaining 16 golden cores and chose one of slightly inferior quality. He fed it once again to truth. As he had anticipated, after truth absorbed the core, the charging progress for the 6th anchoring point showed no noticeable change. Truth's appetite is only growing larger. From foundation establishment treasures to golden cores. Don't tell me that it will next require cave heavens or the marrow of heaven itself. At this thought, Li Fan's expression subtly changed. Golden cores could still be managed, there were ways to procure some. If his strength advanced further, acquiring a few cave heavens shouldn't be a big problem either. But as for the marrow of heaven or the spirit of heaven and earth, these were intrinsic to the Xuanwang realm, and their quantities were finite. Countless cultivators were already eagerly waiting for their appearance, and any sighting would incite a frenzy. Where could he find enough of these for truth to devour? The remaining anchoring points are few. This is troublesome. I had initially planned to use one anchor after this life and then start anew at the nascent soul stage, gradually amassing strength through endless cycles. But now, it seems I must be more cautious. After all, I already know the location of the root of heaven and earth. Restarting wouldn't be too difficult. As Li Fan pondered, he decided to stop feeding truth. Instead, he picked up one of the remaining golden cores and held it in his hand to absorb it slowly. Although it was a single-method golden core, it contained an extremely rare enchantment technique. Related to mental power, it was exactly what Li Fan urgently needed to replenish. The saying, "One may use a stone from another mountain to sharpen their jade," proved true. Although it wasn't a defensive method, knowledge of mental attacks would provide invaluable insight. The next time he encountered such techniques, he would be better prepared. For a deeper understanding, Li Fan drew upon the power of his cave heaven and reactivated the unique trait of the wondrous treasure, 7 Aperture Exquisite Heart. In that instant, numerous revelations flooded his mind. Immersed in these insights, Li Fan couldn't help but feel elated. Meanwhile, as Li Fan was secluded in contemplation, the Kongyan Sea was far from peaceful. Although the battle in the Tianling prefecture had ended and cultivators were recuperating, a recent decree from the 10,000 Immortal Alliance had stirred a commotion. Due to the heavy losses in the war, the Alliance decided to sell all cultivation techniques at half price for the next year. Even advanced techniques previously restricted by merit rankings were now unlocked. No more rank restrictions, anyone with enough contribution points could purchase them directly. Of course, some limitations remained. Each individual could only purchase one technique, solely for personal cultivation. Reselling or transferring the technique in any form was strictly prohibited. Violators would not only lose their cultivation rights to the technique but also face severe punishment. For most cultivators, who previously couldn't afford a single technique even by bankrupting themselves, these limitations seemed insignificant. Their full attention was now captured by the dazzling list of techniques displayed in the Tianshuan mirror. Cultivation techniques are the foundation of immortality. The quality of one's technique directly determines their future prospects. When these rare, high-level techniques entered the public view, the cultivators finally realized how inadequate their standard techniques were. Opportunities like this were rare, missing out would mean regret. Driven by envy, cultivators scrambled to calculate their contribution points and rushed to acquire their desired techniques. At the same time, Kongyan City became a gathering place for angry cultivators. They surrounded the Bureau of Administration, demanding an explanation from He Zhenghao. The reason was simple. During Li Fan's previous fundraising plan, many had poured in their entire savings, leaving only a small reserve. Now, they couldn't afford to purchase techniques. With rare techniques disappearing quickly, the cultivators grew increasingly frustrated and desperate. Damn it, give me back my money. Who would have thought that Li Fan would suddenly become so kind-hearted? The fundraising plan, which had been suspended for so long, restarted without warning. Not only that, but he even removed the upper limit on contributions. Turns out this was all a setup to swindle us. Exactly. His deduction abilities have reached such perfection that he could foresee even the ceasefire between the 10,000 Immortal Alliance and the 5 Elders Association. Do you really think he couldn't predict this? I say he took this opportunity to exploit his brothers. No way. With the wealth and status the Lord Envoy now commands, would he really care about such a trivial amount of money from us? Maybe not if it was just one person or even 10. But this time, there are tens of thousands of cultivators contributing. With so much credit at stake, even an immortal sage of Dao integration would be tempted, let alone a minor envoy in a provincial domain. You'll see, when we go to He Zhenghao to demand our credit back, he'll surely make all kinds of excuses. Under the instigation of some cultivators, panic and anger spread like wildfire. Crowds gathered in front of the administration bureau hall, refusing to leave for a long time. Normally, unrelated individuals were not allowed to congregate in the central core area of the Immortal City. However, this fundraising event involved so many people that even many cultivators within the system had contributed their entire savings. Now that the techniques were available at half price, they couldn't afford the required credit all at once. While they didn't dare trouble their direct superiors, they didn't hesitate to let these outside forces advocate for their rights on their behalf, turning a blind eye to the chaos. Thus, the scene became one of complete disorder. Outside was a chaotic uproar, but inside the administration hall, He Zhenghao and Gao Yuan appeared entirely unconcerned, at ease in their respective seats. A bunch of fools. They agreed to 5 years. 5 years is 5 years. How long has it been, and now they're clamoring for an early redemption of their credit. Do they think the contracts I painstakingly signed with them are worthless? He Zhenghao sneered as his gaze swept across the display of the Tianshuan mirror before him. Dragon soars through 9 transformations, soul transformation technique, 950,000 credits. With it, one can transcend mortality, reshape the body, and defy fate. Mountains and rivers in the sleeve, soul transformation technique, 1 million credits. Mastery allows one to sweep mountains and rivers with a single gesture. One after another, techniques he had once dared not even dream of were now at his fingertips, ready for him to choose without hesitation. After following Li Fan for just a few short years, he was no longer the cautious steward of Luli Island, counting every credit to the last decimal. Although these soul transformation techniques are excellent, they still feel lacking. Why not go all the way in exchange for a Dao integration technique directly? Opportunities like this are rare. The thought once sparked in He Zhenghao's mind could no longer be suppressed. After carefully examining the descriptions of a few Dao integration techniques, the previously tempting soul transformation techniques now seemed dull in comparison. These Dao integration techniques are extraordinary. The cheapest is 2 million credits, and the ones suitable for me cost even more. But that doesn't mean there's no way to make it work. He Zhenghao began to devise a plan in his mind. Meanwhile, Gao Yuan sat silently nearby, his excitement evident in his eyes as he browsed the list of techniques. However, Zhou Qingong, seated between them, remained unmoved, sitting in quiet contemplation. Zhou Qingong's ability to maintain composure is truly remarkable. To resist such temptation, no wonder the Lord Envoy values him more and more, both He Zhenghao and Gao Yuan thought as they glanced at Zhou Qingong. Ever since cultivators began demanding early credit redemption, the three of them had taken refuge in the administration bureau hall, shutting the doors and pretending not to see the chaos outside. After a long silence, Zhou Qingong finally broke it. Letting this commotion continue isn't a solution. While we may not care what they think, if their anger leads to reckless accusations, it could tarnish the Lord Envoy's reputation. Public opinion is a powerful thing. If rumors spread, outsiders might genuinely believe the Lord Envoy is some greedy, small-minded person. Gao Yuan quickly echoed Zhou Qingong's concerns. Indeed, the Lord Envoy intends to use this matter to win people's hearts. If this drags on, it might hinder his plans. He Zhenghao looked up, a little stunned. Do you two have any suggestions? The Lord Envoy has already given instructions, hasn't he? It's clearly stated in the contracts. Early redemption is allowed, but it comes with a penalty, 1/3 of the credits, and a lifetime ban from future fundraising plans. Just go out there and explain it to them. If they insist, then return their credits. Keep a record of their names, and I'll report them to the Lord Envoy. Won't that resolve the issue? Zhou Qingong said calmly. He Zhenghao groaned inwardly. Easy for you to say. 1/3 of their credits. That's a huge amount painstakingly saved over time. How many would be willing to accept that? They'd tear me apart. He glanced pleadingly at Gao Yuan, who merely avoided eye contact, pretending not to hear. Fellow Taoist he. Hearing Zhou Qingong's increasingly firm tone, He Zhenghao had no choice but to grit his teeth and agree. The moment He Zhenghao stepped outside the administration bureau hall, the previously noisy crowd fell silent, all eyes on him. Bang! The doors behind him slammed shut, leaving He Zhenghao to face the crowd with a forced smile that was more pitiful than cheerful. Everyone, please allow me to explain. While He Zhenghao was racking his brains to reason with the crowd, Han Yi remained in a state of deep regret. After the announcement of discounted techniques, despite being penniless, Han Yi had reviewed the list out of curiosity. What he saw threw him into a spiral of frustration. One of the techniques, Void Tribulation Primordial Codex, was perfect for avoiding disasters and surviving tribulations. As a soul transformation technique, it was available for only 1.1 million credits at half price. With this, I could greatly reduce the backlash from my heavenly fortune scripture. No more random disasters falling upon me. It's absolutely perfect for me. The more he thought about it, the deeper his regret grew. Damn it, why couldn't I keep my hands to myself back then? Overwhelmed with frustration, Han Yi felt a tightness in his chest and nearly coughed up blood. Read extra chapters on greater than Spirit Stone translation. No, this method seems tailor-made for me. I absolutely cannot miss it. Han Yi paced back and forth, muttering to himself. I'll lose 1/3 of the penalty fee, and my principal amount is 910,000. If I can successfully recover it, that's 600,000. A wave of heartache struck Han Yi as he calculated the loss. He furrowed his brows in frustration. Still, I'm short by over 500,000. If I push myself again this year, even at the risk of backlash, I could earn that much. But such frequent use will likely harm my foundation. Caught in an internal struggle, Han Yi finally made up his mind after a long while. I used to think that as long as I controlled my fate, I could achieve greatness in cultivation. But judging by my experiences over the past few years, fate alone isn't omnipotent. To achieve Dao integration or even longevity immortal, fate alone is far from enough. Resources, connections, these are just as important. Now that such an incredible technique has surfaced in the world, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If the heavens give and I refuse, I'll only regret it later. With that thought, Han Yi headed straight to the administrative hall in Kongyan City. On the way, he heard that a large number of cultivators had gathered there, all hoping to redeem their contributions early, just like him. At first, he was a bit relieved, thinking that a crowd would make things easier. However, when he arrived, his heart sank. Only a handful of individuals remained scattered around, their expressions weary and lifeless, like frostbitten eggplants. Could something have gone wrong again? Anxiously, Han Yi began asking around. To his surprise, it was just a misunderstanding, and his concerns were unnecessary. So, as long as I'm willing to pay 30% of the penalty fee, I can retrieve my contribution points. No additional conditions. After confirming the details, Han Yi let out a long sigh of relief. A nearby cultivator, however, scoffed, 30% is no small amount, and yet you seem completely unfazed. Han Yi shook his head. A deal is a deal. The contract was crystal clear when I signed it. Even if I regret it now, I won't complain. Honestly, I thought Lord Envoy might take advantage of everyone's urgent need for money and increase the penalties. But it seems their integrity is commendable. Unintentionally, Han Yi's words provoked the cultivators around him. You scoundrel, are you one of Li Fan's stooges? Listening to you, it sounds like being cheated is a blessing. Exactly. You don't look familiar. How do we know you're not here spreading lies for Li Fan? Don't let his sweet words fool you. Despicable. In an instant, Han Yi became the target of everyone's frustrations. Stunned, he didn't know how to respond. Fortunately, He Zhenghao noticed the commotion and intervened in time. Enough with this nonsense. I think this fellow Taoist makes a valid point. Honor your commitments. None of you were forced to sign the contract back then. Some of you even begged to join the fundraiser. So why act like this now? With a stern scolding, He Zhenghao silenced the crowd. The cultivators, unable to argue further, left in embarrassment. What's your name, Taoist? After the crowd dispersed, He Zhenghao addressed Han Yi with a friendly tone. I am Han Yi, he replied nervously, recognizing He Zhenghao as the person in charge of the fundraiser and the key to recovering his contribution points. Haha, fellow Taoist Han, please relax, He Zhenghao said with a knowing smile. Having interacted with tens of thousands of cultivators, He Zhenghao could easily read Han Yi's state of mind. Recalling Li Fan's recent instructions, he quickly devised a plan. In this day and age, cultivators like you, fellow Taoist Han, who understand reason and fairness, are rare. He Zhenghao sighed. Don't be misled by the gossip outside. Lord Envoy is far from a fraud. On the contrary, he is kind-hearted. When he learned that many cultivators urgently needed contribution points, he specifically instructed us to waive the penalty fees for those in dire straits. Han Yi was stunned. Really? He Zhenghao's expression turned serious. Lord Envoy always keeps his word. Why would I deceive you? Come, Taoist Han, I'll process your request immediately. Overjoyed, Han Yi eagerly followed him. Half a day later, holding his recovered 910,000 contribution points, Han Yi was overcome with emotion. Could it be that my luck is finally turning? But as he reflected further, he felt a lingering unease. No, it's not just luck. Li Fan truly lives up to his reputation. What magnanimity, waiving such a significant penalty with a simple gesture. Truly extraordinary. Those cultivators earlier were clearly judging him unfairly. Grateful to Li Fan, Han Yi couldn't help but admire him even more. Little did he know, this was precisely what Li Fan had intended. By instructing his subordinates to selectively waive penalties for some cultivators, Li Fan had sown discord. Those who benefited would naturally defend him when criticized, while others, burdened by real losses, would remain skeptical. As debates arose, public opinion shifted from unified criticism to divided arguments. For uninvolved onlookers, it became harder to trust either side completely. Thus, the negative impact was quietly neutralized. When questioned, one could easily dismiss it with, "Ah, it's a complicated matter. Hard to say who's right." This strategy also bought Li Fan precious time to finalize his plans. If he acted too harshly, it might raise suspicions that he was preparing to flee. But by temporarily calming doubts, he ensured that when the Crimson Flame arrived, his grand scheme in Kongyunsi would reach its final stage. As expected, although the incident caused some unrest, it gradually faded from memory. As the deadline for the discounted technique drew closer, cultivators focused most of their energy on earning contribution points to exchange for techniques before the opportunity disappeared. Han Yi was no exception. Because contribution points were scarce, he searched relentlessly but failed to find a suitable opportunity. Left with no choice, he activated his Heavenly Fate scripture to seek a chance. Following its guidance, he departed from Kongyunsi and ventured deep into the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. Chapter 595. Loyan Prefecture. Strange, it should be around here. There's no mistake. But why? Han Yi furrowed his brows tightly, once again flying over this area for half a day. Yet, he still couldn't pinpoint the exact location of the opportunity he sensed. It's definitely pointing here, but I can only lock onto a general area. Once I enter it, that feeling in my heart inexplicably disappears. It's as if something is deliberately interfering. At this moment, Han Yi felt both joy and worry in his heart. Such a situation had never occurred to him before. According to the records in Heavenly Fate scripture, either the opportunity was too great, exceeding his current ability to bear, which would be a misfortune rather than a blessing, or the fortune here was shielding itself, preventing outsiders from discovering it. I can only go down and search personally. I'll act accordingly, and if it's impossible to proceed, I'll let it go. After all, no matter what, preserving my life must remain the priority. Han Yi pondered deeply and made a decision. Leaving the Kongyunsi behind, he traveled far. Gradually calming down, Han Yi realized he might have been too impulsive recently, likely affected by the backlash of fortune. With the foundation of his Heavenly Fate scripture and the feather of the mystic black bird, combined with his knowledge of an undeveloped small world where the Heavenly Fate mystical bird had fallen, as long as he didn't perish prematurely, following a steady path would ensure success in reaching the soul transformation and Tao integration stages. Even the longevity immortal realm was not beyond his imagination. That void tribulation primordial codex, though excellent, was merely icing on the cake. With these thoughts, Han Yi's mindset gradually became more balanced. No longer obsessed with obtaining the opportunity, he adopted the philosophy of, what is destined will come, and what is not meant to be should not be forced, wandering leisurely. This place was a small town populated by ordinary mortals, with no cultivators guarding it. Han Yi concealed his cultivation and disguised himself as a mortal, blending in. However, the aura of a cultivator is difficult to hide completely. Among a group of ordinary mortals, Han Yi stood out like a crane among chickens. Although it was unclear whether he was truly an immortal master, his extraordinary demeanor made it evident he was someone of wealth and status. Instinctively, the mortals avoided him. Thus, Han Yi found it difficult to integrate. His plan to secretly search for the opportunity was thwarted prematurely. I've heard that ancient cultivators cultivated their minds and spirits. Despite having heaven-reaching power, they could live harmoniously among mortals, without the slightest flaw. I truly wonder how they managed it. Looking at the mortals in the town, who were trembling before he even spoke, Han Yi sighed inwardly. Though they answered all his questions without omission, their responses were completely irrelevant to his purpose. Trying to find the true opportunity among them was like chasing a fool's dream. Han Yi couldn't help but feel helpless. Opportunities are like this, when sought deliberately, they often come to naught. Unwilling to give up, he pretended to leave the town, changed his appearance, and returned, wandering for several more days. Still, there were no results. He thought about trying his luck in the areas surrounding the town, but this time, the sensed location had narrowed even further. The opportunity was in the town. This tantalizing feeling of being close yet unable to grasp it made Han Yi feel suffocated, almost to the point of spitting blood. His previously calm emotions were once again stirred up. As his composure turned to agitation, the more impatient he became, the further the opportunity slipped from his grasp. He didn't know how long he wandered the town, covering almost every inch of land. Still, he found nothing. The mortals in the town, however, noticed his prolonged presence and peculiar behavior. Although they couldn't cultivate, they weren't fools. This cultivator had been lingering in the town for a long time, obviously searching for something. Thus, rumors spread that there was treasure in the town. Although neither they nor Han Yi knew what the treasure was, it didn't stop the townsfolk from becoming suspicious and restless. Whether hoping to secretly claim the treasure for themselves to change their fate or to offer it to the Immortal Master for a reward, this was a chance to transform their lives completely. They searched through their belongings, digging out old and suspicious items for careful examination. These small movements didn't escape Han Yi's sharp perception. However, he didn't care in the slightest. What could mere mortals know of his methods? As long as his fortune sensing persisted, the opportunity remained in its original place. He only needed to monitor the town. If something unusual occurred and the sensing disappeared, he would immediately pinpoint the opportunity. So, Han Yi simply occupied a residence in the town lord's mansion, staying put while using his divine sense to monitor every mortal day and night. Months passed, yet Han Yi still gained nothing. Finally, he decided to give up. It seems this is not meant to be, Han Yi sighed, ready to leave. At that moment, the long unchanged sensing suddenly stirred. Han Yi's heart began to race. Who is it? Sweeping the entire town with his divine sense, Han Yi noticed an old man wearing a straw raincoat with a fishing basket on his back, preparing to leave. Is it him? Han Yi didn't know the man's exact name, only that he was called Old Yu, a simple fisherman. Every day, Old Yu fished in a river east of the town and sold his catch in the marketplace. Quiet and unassuming, his business was mediocre due to his lack of salesmanship. He barely made a living by pricing his fish cheaply. Han Yi had seen him before, but apart from his straw raincoat, the old man had nothing. His home was bare, showing no signs of treasure. Could he have recently fished something out of the river? Han Yi's thoughts raced as he eyed the fishing basket, becoming more convinced of his speculation. Leaping up, he no longer hesitated and chased the fisherman out of the town. However, just as he approached in excitement, intending to question the old man, the elderly figure with deeply wrinkled features glanced in his direction. That single glance was like a bucket of icy water pouring over Han Yi. His hair stood on end as he froze in terror. Something's wrong. An overwhelming sense of danger surged within him, and the fortunate omen he had sensed transformed into a terrifying calamity. Han Yi instantly realized the truth. This opportunity wasn't some treasure, and this fisherman wasn't an ordinary mortal. He was a hidden powerhouse, concealing himself among mortals for some unknown reason. The opportunity was the fisherman himself. The reason his fortune sensing had always pointed to the town was that the fisherman remained there. He had been blind to the true dragon before him, missing it repeatedly. Now that the fisherman decided to leave, the sensing changed accordingly. If he had acted rashly earlier and provoked this formidable figure. Understanding everything in an instant, Han Yi broke into a cold sweat. His pace slowed as he decided not to take any risks and prepared to retreat. Who are you, and where do you come from? The fisherman suddenly spoke. This location was already several miles away from the small town, a desolate wilderness with no one else around. Only Han Yi and the old fisherman stood there. The old fisherman spoke, and the question was obviously directed at Han Yi. When a powerful cultivator asks, how could he dare not answer? Han Yi felt his scalp tingle with fear. But his life was at stake, he absolutely couldn't afford to defy the other party. Reluctantly, he flew closer, landed on the ground, lowered his head, bowed deeply, and greeted, "I greet the senior." Unexpectedly, the old fisherman wasn't appeased by such courtesy. Frowning, he asked again, "Where are you from?" Han Yi's heart pounded violently as if it would explode. It was obvious that his earlier hesitation had already irritated the elder. As the saying goes, 3 strikes, and you're out. If his next response still displeased the elder, it might mean his head would part ways with his body. Yet, his journey was guided by the fortunes in his heart, seeking his own destiny. But how could he possibly share such a thing with others? Though the elder before him had an unfathomable cultivation level, there was no guarantee he wouldn't covet the heavenly fate scripture. If Han Yi revealed the truth, he would likely face a fate of having his soul searched and life essence drained. It seemed that no matter what he did, death awaited him. Han Yi's mind raced wildly, and within a moment, he thought of an ambiguous answer. Noticing the elder's expression growing impatient, Han Yi steeled himself and forced out a response, "Junior has come here pursuing an item. Following its trail for 10,000 miles, I arrived here, only to lose all traces of it." Afterward, He lowered his head and waited for his fate. Unexpectedly, the strange and powerful elder didn't reprimand him. After a long silence, his tone grew somewhat pensive. So, you've also lost something. Also, hearing that word, Han Yi immediately sensed a glimmer of hope. He quickly nodded, exactly so. This item is very important to me, so I've traversed mountains and rivers to retrieve it. Yet, heaven has not granted my wish. The old fisherman's tone softened. He gazed at Han Yi and nodded approvingly. Precious things must be well kept. Once lost, finding them again is no easy matter. I don't even know how long I've been searching, yet I still haven't found mine. Han Yi dared not ask what the elder had lost. At this moment, he felt relieved to have narrowly escaped death. Not daring to speak recklessly, he merely replied, "Senior's words are a lesson to remember." He then lowered his head and remained silent, no longer concerning himself with any opportunities, only praying the old fisherman would leave soon. However, something that made his heart stop abruptly occurred again. At that moment, he suddenly heard the elder say, "Do not move." Han Yi's body froze in place. Believing he was about to meet his end, countless images from his life flashed through his mind. There was the ecstatic joy of discovering the heavenly fate scripture in an ancient ruin shortly after entering the chi condensation stage. There was the anguish of repeated foundation establishment failures due to the backlash of cultivating the scripture. And there was the exhilaration of narrowly escaping death in the small world of Beast Realm, finally achieving foundation establishment upon his return, and feeling as though the world was his to conquer. Am I about to die? Han Yi thought despairingly. Just when he had given up all hope, the old fisherman frowned and said, "No wonder you couldn't find it, it's been under surveillance this whole time." With a casual wave of his hand, it seemed as if the elder severed something invisible. Instead of death, Han Yi felt an inexplicable sense of relief. It was as if a shackle that had long bound him suddenly vanished. Under surveillance? What does that mean? Han Yi was momentarily bewildered, then realized with a start. Have I been watched this entire time? No wonder I've always felt like nothing was going right. Has every move of mine been under someone else's control? Recalling how he used to observe mortals daily in the small town, Han Yi broke into a cold sweat. Who? When? Faces flashed through Han Yi's mind one after another. Each seemed suspicious, yet none fit completely. You young people. The old fisherman shook his head at Han Yi's pale, frightened face. Traveling alone, you must always be cautious. Being watched for so long, haven't all your secrets been laid bare? Perhaps the thing you're searching for has already been stolen, the elder lamented, as if pitying him. But I don't blame you. Suddenly, the old fisherman's tone shifted. He frowned slightly and looked up at the sky. The people in this area have some very unpleasant habits, he said, narrowing his eyes as though recalling something serious. Senior, please save me. Perhaps it was the elder's momentary display of kindness. Or perhaps Han Yi was terrified by the realization of having been watched without knowing. Han Yi's composure broke, and he knelt before the old fisherman, kowtowing in desperation. Save you. The old fisherman was briefly puzzled by Han Yi's plea. You needn't worry. I've taught that person a harsh lesson. They won't be able to watch you anymore. Hearing this, Han Yi was overjoyed. May I ask, Senior, who was watching me, and what did they look like? The old fisherman hesitated. They were too far away, and my eyesight isn't what it used to be, so I couldn't see clearly. No matter, I still ask Senior to help identify them. Grasping at this lifeline, Han Yi felt he couldn't rest easy without knowing who had been spying on him. He used the water mirror technique to recreate the faces of those he had interacted with over the years, focusing on the most suspicious ones. Senior, please. Just as Han Yi was about to speak, he sensed a strange tension in the air. Turning his head, he felt a sinking dread. In his panic, he had also included the scene from the sky above the Kongyan Sea, where he had glimpsed the trapped sword of azure wind. At that moment, the fisherman elder was staring intently at the scene. Could it be that he's recognized the characteristics of the spirit of heaven-earth? Han Yi immediately regretted his actions. A sword. But the elder wasn't focused on the spirit of heaven-earth. A sword. Han Yi's gaze also fell on the broken sword trapped by the azure wind. I've been searching for so long, yet still haven't found it. The elder's earlier words echoed in Han Yi's mind. Could it be? A terrifying thought surfaced in Han Yi's mind. Before he could react, the old fisherman turned his cloudy gaze toward him. The next moment, darkness enveloped Han Yi. Dot 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 dot. Read extra chapters on greater than Spirit Stone translation. The fisherman and Han Yi stood facing each other. Suddenly, a violent energy descended upon the scene. The fisherman remained calm, standing as immovable as a mountain. Even his straw raincoat seemed to embody the passage of millennia, firmly clinging to him, untouched by the raging storm. In contrast, Han Yi's body erupted with an overwhelming aura of black malevolence, surging outward. Under the strange energy's influence, his expression froze, locked in the moment the fisherman had last gazed at him. Yet, his appearance was eerie beyond words. His pupils vanished, and his face fractured like a shattered porcelain mask, revealing a web of cracks. His entire body flickered intermittently, vanishing into the billowing black mist and reappearing seconds later, as though caught between existence and nothingness. The transformation occurred in an instant. The fisherman calmly picked up his fish basket from the ground and slung it over his back, striding purposefully toward the Kongyan Sea. As for Han Yi, the swirling black mist abruptly retreated into his body after the fisherman's departure. Yet, Han Yi did not return to normal. He remained standing motionless, like a statue that had always been there. His hollow eyes stared blankly ahead. Time passed. A plain white bird flew overhead. Strange events followed. Without warning, a previously healed wound on the bird's wing reopened, causing it to lose balance. It spiraled downward, unable to recover, and crashed to the ground, lifeless, right in front of Han Yi's statue. More time passed. A group of ordinary townsfolk, chatting cheerfully, passed by the road where Han Yi stood. Curiously, they seemed oblivious to his presence, failing to notice the statue at all. They walked straight through him, as if he were an illusion. Strangely, there was no collision. Moments later, one of the villagers suddenly clutched his chest, his face turning pale. Amid the group's panicked cries, he collapsed lifelessly to the ground, struck by a sudden heart attack. The group, originally heading into the nearby mountains to gather herbs, abandoned their plans in sorrow. Carrying the body of their deceased companion, they returned to their village, mourning all the while. More time elapsed. A cultivator in a green robe flew over Han Yi's statue, his face alight with joy. Finally, after countless trials, I've collected the final ingredient. With my new alchemy cauldron furnace, this time, success is certain. The mystic ice treasure pill will finally be mine. His murmurs were filled with anticipation. A day later, in the skies above Loyan Prefecture, a minor celestial phenomenon occurred. A cultivator had perished. It was reported that during a critical alchemical process, an explosion had destroyed the furnace, taking the alchemist's life. Such incidents were rare but not unheard of in this era. As the deceased was an unremarkable golden core cultivator, the news caused little stir beyond a few sighs of pity. Yet, subtle changes began rippling through Loyan province, unnoticed by the world. The narrative shifted back to the fisherman. He walked steadily on the ground, not soaring through the skies as other cultivators might. Yet his speed was astonishing. With each step, he seemed to traverse thousands of miles, his figure flashing as he advanced toward the Kongyan Sea. When he reached Yuandao Prefecture, just one step away from his destination, a blue-robed figure appeared in his path. "Fellow Taoist, I advise you to turn back," the figure said. The fisherman frowned, studying the man. Clad in a blue Taoist robe, the figure had white hair, a deeply wrinkled face, and the frailty of someone nearing their end. "Have I met you before?" the fisherman asked uncertainly. The blue-robed man coughed and replied in a hoarse voice. "You've grown forgetful, old friend. Last time we met, you still remembered me. Now, have you truly forgotten who I am?" He added, "It wasn't so long ago, just 2 centuries past." The fisherman lowered his head, lost in thought. After a moment, he shook his head. "I can't recall, but it doesn't matter, you won't live much longer." The fisherman's tone was indifferent, as though commenting on the weather. The blue-robed man froze for a moment. "Yes," he said softly, "I won't live much longer." His voice carried a trace of melancholy. "Will you still try to stop me?" the fisherman asked. "My duty leaves me no choice," the blue-robed man replied without hesitation. Hearing this, the fisherman wasted no words. He extended his right hand and grasped at the air. Suddenly, crisscrossing black threads materialized around the blue-robed man, forming a massive web that ensnared him. The blue-robed man let out a muffled groan as his body vanished, leaving only a single blue feather glowing within the shrinking net. When the net retracted into the fisherman's hand, he examined the feather, his brow furrowing briefly in confusion. Shaking his head slightly, he placed the feather into his basket and continued toward the Kanyan Sea. Shortly after his departure, a faint, ghostly figure reappeared at the scene. "After my death, let the floodwaters rise," the figure muttered with a cold snort. He cast a deep, lingering gaze at the fisherman's retreating form before vanishing. In Qingyan Prefecture, 2 prefecture away Loyan, another perspective unfolded. When his spiritual senses were severed, Li Fan immediately knew something was wrong. Reacting swiftly, he retrieved a sacred artifact gifted to him by the 5 Elders Association. A statue of the manifestation of Heavenly Sovereign statue. Unlike the 5-faced, 10-armed version used for communication with the 5 Elders Pavilion, this statue depicted the Heavenly Sovereign of Sorrowless, its serene visage exuding compassion. The statue served one purpose: to protect the Divine Sea consciousness from collapse during a fatal attack. The artifact activated just in time. It felt as though a heavy blow had struck Li Fan's head. His mind buzzed, his vision fragmented into countless overlapping images, and his body swayed. Coughing up blood, he instinctively clutched his head. Even the body protection charging progress of truth dropped by 5%. Fortunately, he suffered only minor injuries and avoided disaster. With the power of his heavenly internal law domain and 5 elemental energy circulating within him, Li Fan quickly recovered his vitality. The Xuanwang heart-refining mantra began to operate automatically. Within a few breaths, even the injuries to his divine sea consciousness had completely vanished. Not only did he effortlessly dismantle my formless killing intent, but he also managed to strike my divine sense from such a great distance. If it weren't for the protective shield of the manifestation of Heavenly Sovereign statue, my sea of consciousness would have suffered severe damage. Li Fan glanced at the manifestation of Heavenly Sovereign statue in his hand. After emitting a faint white glow, it dissolved and disappeared without a trace. Old fisherman, a being above Tao integration is indeed terrifying. Although Li Fan was astonished, he was far from fearful. Instead, a glimmer of excitement flashed in his eyes. He hadn't anticipated things to proceed so smoothly. When he noticed Han Yi wandering aimlessly into the heartlands of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and pausing in the Loyan Prefecture, Li Fan already had a vague sense of what was about to unfold. Previously, he had subtly implanted the ideas of the Azure Wind-trapped sword and the whereabouts of the old fisherman into Han Yi's mind using the Cloud-Water illusionary dream technique. He had hoped to use Han Yi as a medium to relay information about the Azure Wind-trapped sword to the old fisherman. In Li Fan's expectations, Han Yi would need additional guidance to find the old fisherman within the vast regions of several provinces. However, as if guided by destiny or influenced by unknown factors, Han Yi moved with unexpected precision, directly locking onto the old fisherman's location. The old fisherman was a shared opportunity for all. Cultivators within the heartlands of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance would instinctively search for his whereabouts. Once discovered, news of his presence spread quickly, with mutual cooperation ensuring swift dissemination. Li Fan, having experienced countless cycles of reincarnation, was naturally well versed in this pattern. Thus, when he saw the old fisherman through his perspective of heaven and earth, Li Fan couldn't help but feel immense joy. His plan to orchestrate a battle between the old fisherman, the heavenly doctor, and the sage seemed to be on the brink of success. When Li Fan initially implanted the thoughts into Han Yi's mind, he also left a wisp of heavenly calamity energy in his body. Though almost undetectable, under Li Fan's deliberate manipulation, it could erupt in a manner that the old fisherman wouldn't overlook. Through Han Yi's memories, the old fisherman could see the location of the Azure Wind-trapped sword. Similarly, he could witness the appearance of the heavenly doctor in the Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace. Li Fan was confident that both the sage and the old fisherman harbored irreconcilable hatred toward the heavenly doctor. The old fisherman, after reclaiming the heavenly calamity sword and restoring some of his power, would undoubtedly seek a confrontation with the heavenly doctor. This would undoubtedly complicate matters for the heavenly doctor. The plan was perfect. However, Han Yi proved to be an unexpected variable. Despite the old fisherman appearing before him more than 10 times, Han Yi failed to notice anything amiss, leaving Li Fan, who had been tailing them from afar, repeatedly shaking his head. Of course, Li Fan wouldn't risk his own safety by intervening. Instead, he kept his distance, patiently observing. Fortunately, while the process deviated slightly, the outcome ultimately aligned with his expectations. When Han Yi, lost in his thoughts, charged at the old fisherman, even Li Fan couldn't help but silently applaud his courage. However, when the old fisherman merely cast a glance in Han Yi's direction, Li Fan immediately sensed trouble. Thankfully, I was prepared for this and am no longer the novice foundation establishment cultivator I once was. Exhaling deeply, Li Fan, now recovered, began pondering his next steps. If everything proceeds as expected, the old fisherman should now be heading toward the Kongyan Sea. Gods clash, mortals suffer. My true body should steer clear of the chaos. With a thought, Li Fan shifted his attention to his clone, Zhou Qingong. At the Kongyan Sea, the storm was gradually subsiding. Most cultivators had turned their focus to cultivation and studying the techniques they had recently acquired, leaving the administration hall unusually quiet. Unnoticed by anyone, Li Fan directed Zhou Qingong to approach the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. The place was almost deserted, with only a few cultivators occasionally passing through in groups. After a moment of contemplation, Li Fan decided to wait outside instead of entering the palace immediately. 3 days passed. A sudden gust of wind rustled his robes. Li Fan raised his head toward the sky and extended a hand, feeling the intensifying wind. A sense of anticipation swelled within him. The old fisherman is in place. Will the sage come? Based on past experiences, Li Fan was almost certain of the answer. The faint aura emitted by the heavenly doctor's statue alone was enough to attract the sage. With the addition of the old fisherman, an old acquaintance, the sage had no reason not to appear. Moreover, the timing perfectly aligned with the sage's expected arrival. Li Fan was confident that his plan was coming to fruition. Next, I need to find a good spot to watch the show. Retrieving a gourd of fine wine from his storage ring, Li Fan gave it a gentle pat and entered the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. After completing 3 trials with lightning speed, he stayed behind, sharing drinks and idle chatter with senior brother Qin. While outwardly relaxed, Li Fan was silently awaiting the inevitable confrontation. However, as time dragged on without the anticipated scene, Li Fan grew increasingly restless. Ha, junior brother, you're quite insincere. Pretending to drink with me while your thoughts wander. Tell me, which junior sister has caught your eye? Don't worry, share it with me. If suitable, I'll act as your matchmaker. Of course, a senior sister isn't out of the question either. Senior brother Qin, half drunk, burst into hearty laughter. Li Fan was about to respond when the entire world suddenly shook violently. Senior brother Qin, mid-drink, froze, trembling uncontrollably. Heavenly Doctor. All traces of drunkenness vanished as he ground his teeth in anger. Boom! Layers of illusions shattered, and when Li Fan reappeared at the gates of the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, the first thing he saw was the confrontation between the old fisherman and the Heavenly Doctor. Unlike in his previous life, the once thunderous wails and lamentations within the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace had subsided significantly, as if something was suppressing their outbursts of hatred and sorrow. The old fisherman glared at the Heavenly Doctor, his body enveloped in surging black calamity energy. Yet, the heavenly calamity sword fragment was nowhere in sight. Though silent, the murderous intent in his eyes was unmistakable. For some reason, however, he refrained from attacking. The Heavenly Doctor, on the other hand, appeared rather indifferent, even slightly amused. How interesting. Tianju, have you regained your memory? The Heavenly Doctor asked. TL note. Tianju can mean heavenly absolute, extreme or even something more. Just wanted to give you guys some context as I didn't know if I should keep it as Tianju or go with English term of heaven's absolute. Both are right of course, but knowing and context behind the name can always be a plus. Same goes for Heavenly Doctor named Tianyi.